Good evening. Welcome to Soundtracks with Birdman. Happy birthday to John Williams. 90 years young today. Many, many, many more years to come. Hopefully. Tonight we have Eric Woods joining us. H. Boomer has the night off. He has to fix his John Deere lawn tractor. And Sound Engraver will be joining us shortly. I have posted the link for the show in the comments. If anyone wants to jump in and discuss John Williams, I'd be happy to have you. But how are you tonight, Mr. Eric Woods?
I'm okay. I'm good. It's been a crazy couple of weeks, and today was absolutely insane. I'd been on the road since about 7 o'clock today. We're doing shoots all around the area, but yeah, glad to be back home and talking about John Williams is exactly what I want to do at the end of the evening. So I'm excited about this.
What did you listen to today?
I have listened to absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
The only thing that I did listen to back, I had to listen to my sixth part of my John Williams podcast, because I literally recorded it and produced it last night, and I only was able to review all the little edits I made to my voice and hopefully get the show out properly. And so I had to listen to it back this morning before I published it. So that's probably the only thing I've listened to. So yeah, I listened to myself today. Okay. But usually on a day like today, and I wanted to take today off, but it was I'm just so busy that I couldn't. And so usually I will play end credits from John Williams movies, and that will fill my entire day. And then once I get past that, I just click my John Williams collection on iTunes and hit shuffle and just go from there. And that's always, it's wonderful to get one surprise after another. So yeah, that's how I usually like to celebrate Williams's birthday, but I didn't get a chance to do it today properly.
Well, there's tomorrow, right?
Oh, there's all year. It's going to be ongoing. Yeah, it's on. I mean, he's doing that, his 90th birthday concert in Vienna in March, and then he's got the thing in Washington, which I think
I got tickets for that. Yep,
that's fantastic. And yeah, so I mean, we celebrate anytime, any day, every day. So yeah, there's never a bad time to listen to John Williams music.
Well, Andrew says he listened to Black Sunday and The Empire Strikes Back.
Excellent. I talked to somebody
Sunday
on Twitter.
Doesn't get enough love.
Exactly. I was just saying Black Sunday gets lost among Star Wars and Close Encounters. And it really is. That year is so transitional, because Black Sunday sounds nothing like anything he would write again. It is very 70s sounding. And but once he got into those big fantasy epics, that sound kind of, somewhat disappeared. You can hear it in some of his later scores creeping back in, but there's nothing that sounds like Black Sunday anymore in John Williams' repertoire, at least from what I can recall. But yeah, that's a good little gem.
I like that and the Iger Sanction, both from the 70s.
Yeah, it's like listening to Poseidon Adventure or Earthquake or Iger Sanction, even Missouri Breaks, which I think is, it's not a great movie, but it's just a lovely score. And anytime he's using harmonica, it's always he's so good. It's so good. So I'm hoping one of these days we're going to get that Sugarland Express album that I think that's the grail that every John Williams fan wants. It's never been released. Shocked that it hasn't.
I have a copy of it.
Yeah, probably.
It's an import.
Yeah, yeah, I think. But having a release with the Mike Matessino touch and the La La Land.
Oh yeah. Take my money right now.
Yeah,
yes,
it would be beautiful, because it's a very different sounding John Williams score, and especially for a Spielberg movie. But it's stuck in the 70s, and it's fantastic. And I hope we eventually get a release of Sugarland Express.
Do you know why it wasn't ever released?
No, there are rumors floating around that John Williams has put the kibosh on it, he never wants it released, which I find to be somewhat bizarre, because he's recorded the main theme before, and a couple of other orchestras have recorded the theme, but I don't know why. I don't know why it's something that just is it could be lost. Who knows? But I've never heard a really good reason as to why Sugarland Express is not out, especially when it's a Steven Spielberg, John Williams collaboration,
Yeah,
especially since it's their first. I
first.
mean,
Yeah.
the historical relevance of it alone, I mean, that's one of the reasons why it should be released, whether it's a good score or not. I think it's a great score. I think it's a lot of fun. But yeah, I hope one day we all get a chance to experience it.
Would you accept a rescore?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of re-recordings. So, I mean, I can remember. I mean, sticking with John Williams when Superman uh, was re-recorded by Perez Sarabande Records, and I don't even think they knew that it was. I think it was Rhino Records was releasing their expanded edition, one the first expanded edition of Superman around that time. But I think we all thought that when Perez was recording Superman, like that was going to be the best of an expanded Superman that we were ever going to get. And I mean, that was I don't think they would have done it if they knew that there was an expanded release coming out, because it was a Herculean effort by Kevin Casca to completely reorchestrate that score because the parts were lost. So he had to do it, from what I recall, it's either through sketches or just by ear. He had to just completely renotate the entire score for that recording, and basically saved that score. But then a couple months later, the original soundtrack came out from Rhino, and then years later, of course, we got like definitive edition from, well, one it was from Film Score Monthly, and then La La Land. So I mean, we've been just blessed with Williams releases. And so, but I mean, yeah, re-recording, I love them. I think they're great. I mean, yeah, there's some bad ones, but there's some real good ones, and there's re-recordings that are even better than the original recording.
What do you think is going to come out this year, or what would you like to come out this year?
I do know of a few, but I will not divulge that information. Okay. But there are some that are unexpected, some that you wouldn't think that, oh, that's going to get expanded.
I'm hoping for JFK.
JFK would be fantastic, and the reason I want JFK, one, yes, I want to hear everything, and two, I would love it if Mattasino can or interview Stone, and if John Williams has the memory about the whole entire process about that, and what cues were recorded beforehand. Again, the rumor is that he recorded at least 90%, 95, maybe in the entire score before filming began. It was all based on the script, because Williams just didn't have time to do it. And so when doing research for my John Williams special that came out recently, Oliver Stone has stated that, yeah, Williams recorded everything, and then he just kind of picked apart those cues and threw them into the movie. And I think there were a few cues that they even played back on set. So JFK would be very interesting. I mean, it's an underrated score for sure. I would love to see that. Born on the 4th of July.
Yeah.
I think that would be great for even just a remastering. But I think anything and every John Williams is in play now, with Mike Mattasino just kind of having that exclusive contact with John Williams, and he's done such a great job for La La Land. I think that if he decides that he wants to do a John Williams project, with the exception of Star Wars and Indiana Jones, I think they'll let him do it. So, and I mean, even Entrada gets in on the game. So I think there's a whole, what was it, future-proofing John Williams. That's Mattasino's goal. So releasing these albums, it's like, that's the last of the last. This is the album that you're going to need, because there will never be another one afterwards. So I do hope that, I mean, it's Star Wars, it's the prequels, I mean, the prequels expanded, and then doing Indiana Jones,
please,
right?
Please, dear Lord, please.
Please. And we just keep thinking about it every year, and then we keep on thinking about, well, what anniversary is coming up, and we always miss all these anniversaries, and now we're at the 90th of John Williams. I don't even know if record labels are thinking about that as let's release, like Indiana Jones is coming out next year,
June.
Are they going to do a box set? I doubt it. So I don't know. So there are going to be little other John Williams gems that are going to be coming out during this year. And there's some that are going to be like, yeah, what? But that's going to be interesting to hear, some extra music from that score. So,
Well, my credit card is ready to be swiped.
yeah, I mean, and that was one of the best things about doing the show that I did, is just going back and, I mean, because I did this show 10 years ago for John Williams' 80th, and so I expanded it from 5 parts to 6. But I also got all the new remastered tracks and put them into this show, and it was a great way to rediscover those scores and hear how they sounded differently compared to what I had originally put in the show 10 years ago. So, and I mean, the plethora of releases that have come out since, I can't believe it. I mean, 10 years ago, if you said that we'd have an expanded Always,
I'll be
and
like,
then
no, we're
no
not.
way. And then know that, that there was a whole other end credits suite that he came up with, and it was vastly different than anything we ever heard before. And we had no idea that he was adapting, Smoke Gets in Your Eyes and putting it in the end credits. I think that's just so fascinating. And yeah, it's a great time to be the soundtrack collector, and I know John Williams fan. And I mean, we're glad he's still around, still writing scores, but yeah, we have a guy like Mattasino who has a way in to get all these great gems to us in their definitive form.
Did you see the article? It popped up on my Google feed tonight. New York Times or New York Post interview with John Williams. He said he's done writing film music.
No, I didn't hear that.
I clicked on it and it wouldn't let me read it without subscribing. I was like, you bastards.
Well, I mean, he's still writing for Spielberg, but I mean,
right.
I mean, he's got that score coming out this year, and I think he's recording in about a month. I mean, it could be. Who knows? I mean, he is having such a wonderful time, I think, taking his stuff on the road, and even for some reason, his joy and love for the violin and Sophie Mutter has just reinvigorated him. I've never seen him more energetic in a really long time. And so the fact that he's going back to Vienna again
next month. I mean, are you going?
Yeah, I would love to. I mean, the thing is, John, you could take a plane ride for a couple hours and come to Toronto. We'd love to have you, but he goes back to Vienna. I mean, he's going over an ocean, and I mean, it's like, okay, great. I mean, I think the chance to play with a world-class orchestra like that just really fascinates him. And I think he had such a great time doing that. I think that's one of the reasons why he's going back. And of course, to continue to collaborate with Sophie Mutter, I think just thrills him. So, yeah, I mean, as much as he's going overseas, I would love to get him here in Canada at some point, but I don't know. But it just seems like, I mean, you got a 90-year-old man who's still willing to go out on the road and is invigorated with writing more classical music and revisiting his old stuff and reorchestrating and doing that. He's still busy, still keeping the mind going. But as for film scoring, I mean, nobody's asking him to write film music except for Steven Spielberg, which is sad. I mean, I think one of the reasons he said back when he was working on The Book Thief, he's like, nobody's asking me to write music. It's just Spielberg, and it was George Lucas at the time. And then of course he got Star Wars. So I'm sure he would love to do it if someone asked him. But who knows what's happening to him. But I would love to read the article and see whether he's actually quoted in saying that or not.
Yeah,
that's big news.
I'm looking forward to Indy 5.
Yeah,
definitely the film score at least. I need to see a trailer to get excited for the movie.
I don't know what they're gonna do. I have an idea of what they might be doing, but it's gonna be this. I mean, on my podcast, I called Crystal Skull the black sheep of the family. I think it's 5. 5's gonna be that one that's gonna be like all cuckoo and weird, and we're gonna be like, what is this, like Death Wish 5? It's like, oh, why are they still doing these? You know what I mean? And just I don't get it. But hey, people want it. People still want it. but it just is going to seem so weird to see. I mean, Harrison Ford just looks frail to me, but hopefully it's a good idea. It's an interesting idea, and see what they can do with it. Yeah. But yeah, the score, I'm really looking forward to it for sure.
Yeah. I think you have the best idea for continuing Indiana Jones. Do it as a cartoon on Netflix.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that, or yeah, I think that's a great way of doing it. I mean, you could do a 3D animated version of it, or I mean, you could do a young Indiana Jones kind of series and a la like the Mandalorian. But I just don't know. I don't know what the appetite for Indiana Jones is like. I mean, Star Wars is such a huge property and a huge franchise, whereas Indiana Jones, I think, is rather lukewarm. There are huge fans. People love it, but there's not that kind of that hunger for it. Like people are like, oh, we need more Indiana Jones. So I think we're going to have to see how Indiana Jones 5 fares at the box office. But yeah, I would be all up for like a Saturday morning cartoon of Indiana Jones and just, explore the, alternate adventures that he had and bring back other characters, like go on an adventure with Short Round. Yeah. And do that sort of stuff. And I think that would be so much fun and just have fun with it. And I think that's the one way you can really keep Indiana Jones alive and also keep the spirit of Indiana Jones, which is obviously Harrison Ford, alive. And, without recasting him, just create a cartoon. And I think we could have some fun with it. I would. Much like, why aren't they doing another? I mean, I loved Solo, a Star Wars story. So, I mean, just, let's just do a Solo miniseries. Let's just get going. Forget doing another movie. Let's do another 10 episodes and let's have fun with that. Because I thought Solo was fantastic, and there's just so much to explore now that you can. I mean, with all the way that the special effects have evolved, I think you can do it and do it really well. And but yeah, I mean, who knows? Who knows?
I'm curious. What's your like top 5 Williams scores that aren't a franchise?
Oh wow. Well, Hook is up there for sure. Schindler's List for sure. The Reavers, probably. I love the Reavers.
Jeff Cummings talked a lot about the Reavers today.
Yeah, it's excellent. It just, it's so lyrical. And you can see why Steven Spielberg fell in love with John Williams listening to that. Jane Eyre, for sure.
Yes.
Sure.
Thank you for saying that.
Yes. And now it's a one that doesn't get a lot of love, but I think, talking about Jeff, if you listen to his episode of Jane Eyre, that's a passionate episode, and they play a lot of clips from the film because the original soundtrack itself has been lost. So all we have is the LP the assembly of the LP that's been released. And so there's some interesting unreleased cues in that show, but they do a great job of really explaining as to why it's one of John Williams' best scores. I'm trying to think of something else that's not a franchise. Memoirs of a Geisha, for sure. I think besides, in this new century, if you look at his top 3 scores, I think you're looking at AI, Memoirs of a Geisha, and The Force Awakens. And I know The Force Awakens part of a series, but I think if you're looking at anything other than that, I would go with AI and Memoirs of a Geisha and add that to the list. I think Memoirs is fantastic. Like, you could tell he went all out for that score. Absolutely. I think he wanted to win that year. I think deep down inside, he's like, I'm going to win the Oscar this year. He should have.
And Jeff and I were talking about that this morning too. I said I really thought he was going to win for Munich that year, but
yeah, even music, and that's it. I mean, it could have been the split vote. Who knows? But Memoirs was just, there was just something about that, and of course with all the soloists and just the feel, and you can just tell when he's really deep into a project. And Memoirs of a Geisha feels that way. Like he's going all out. Same thing with The Force Awakens. You can just tell that this could have been his last Star Wars score. Like if this was it, he's going out with a bang, and he did what he did back in, the original trilogy's days. I mean, he was writing themes for places, even like the Jedi Steps. I mean, come on, right? I mean, just this one
It's been a while since we've
standalone
had
theme.
that.
It's like, what is this? But every single character got this. It was so expansive. It was so amazing. It was just so full of energy, so full of youth and vigor. It just felt like John Williams was 20, 30 years younger writing that score. And I think Daisy Ridley also just infatuated him. I mean, there's a reason why Rey's theme is so good. He loved that girl, and I think he loves scoring, for the character of Rey, and that's why I think the Force Awakens is so good and so inspired. It was great to hear that. Much like it feels like the Phantom Menace as well, it's my favorite Star Wars prequel score. Again, just feels like an old school original trilogy score, like millions of themes, just crazy, energetic, colorful orchestrations all over the place. I mean, Duel of the Fates. I mean, if that's one composer's only, claim to fame, I mean, I'm sure anybody would go like, yep, I'll take that and I'll just leave, but here's John Williams, and that's just one of a tiny, selection of his melodic material for Star Wars. Yeah, it's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling what this man has done, and just keeps being fresh, always fresh, and always thinking of new ideas. That's what I love about him. I was listening to an interview, and I think it might have been, he was talking about Munich, but again, wanting to give a film its own unique musical sound or musical identity, and whether that is through a particular orchestration or a melody, but not just making a signature melody, but also giving it a signature sound. And so that's why you get such great themes like The Terminal, written for clarinet, and Sabrina, written for piano, and Schindler's List for violin, and 7 Years in Tibet, written for cello. I mean, it's unmistakable. You hear those themes and you know exactly where they belong. One because of the melody, and one because of the color of the orchestration. And Williams, again, will find ways of inspiring himself. Like even with the BFG, he's like, I have never experienced a movie like this, and I want to do a child opera or ballet. So he wrote his score like that. Fascinating, utterly fascinating. So yeah, he might be 90 years old on the outside, but he's super, young,
he's
and
super
active,
sharp in mind.
Super sharp. Yeah, absolutely. So well spoken too. So well spoken. You can ask him anything. There's hardly an and an awe. He knows exactly where he's going and what to say, and he says it so eloquently as well. Love the man. It's fantastic.
And we have Sound Engraver joining us now. How are you, ma'am?
I'm doing well. I'm actually listening to Memoirs of a Geisha right now.
Doing what?
I'm listening to Memoirs of a Geisha right now.
Oh, okay. Fantastic.
Because I have had a full day and I haven't been able to prep. And it's been forever since I've streamed with my headphones on, so everything just sounds really muted.
Oh.
So I'm Sound Engraver. I can't see your name.
Oh, my name is Eric.
Eric, nice to meet you. I'm Michelle for short.
Nice to meet you.
Now, actually, Daniel, I feel so close up. Do you have a way to split the screen, or? Oh, you do it on your phone, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, you're asking me fancy things.
It's cool. It's cool. I feel so close. Oh, bye.
All right. We'll take over the show.
Oh, that's okay. Now I can hear you a little bit better. I just set up my computer, so.
Yeah, so did I.
Am I still here?
Yes, you're still here.
Okay. Yes, Eric Woods is from Canada. He does cinematic sound radio up there.
That's great.
And Sound Engraver is a violin teacher. She has a master's in, is it music or music education?
Actually, it's 2 bachelors of music, one in music education and then one in composition, and then master's in composition.
Okay.
Wow. That's impressive. So do you teach? Is that your primary job, or?
Yeah, I teach online right now. I live in the countryside, so I have online students, and I'm trying to grow my business and teach more.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
That really is. I mean, and I really do mean it. I love teachers, and I love music teachers more than anything.
Oh, cool.
Because it's just, the arts are dying, and it's probably the only reason why I got through high school was through music class, because it's the only class I managed to ace. So, but I mean, music appreciation, I think, is dying, and I'm just glad people like you are around to hopefully introduce the younger generation to all the great stuff that's out there, and do it properly. Well, properly. I mean, there are no rules, but
right.
But yeah,
right.
but I'm glad there are people like you out there. So yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate that. 1 second. I'm gonna back away, and I'm gonna bring my mic forward.
That's fine. Yeah. Hello, Al. How are you? I saw earlier today you said you're having trouble with your mother. I hope she's doing better. I'm sorry I didn't comment when you said something in the chat earlier today. I was just like so focused on doing the interview with Jeff. I didn't want to break my flow, but I did read your comment, and I did think about you, and I hope your mom's doing better.
There.
Better?
I think so.
Okay. So, Sound Engraver, when did you first start realizing who John Williams was?
So I'm a little different from most people in that I just wasn't a movie person for the longest time. In fact, probably even until recently, being in my mid-30s and all that. And so I just didn't have a lot of exposure to things like theater outside of family films and Disney and all of that. So my first encounter with John Williams actually was with Star Wars, because Star Wars was really one of the first franchises I got into, pretty much one of the only franchises I got into in my early 20s. So I wasn't really thinking of music on the side of film. I was always thinking of music in the concert hall, classically trained, or bluegrass or something like that. Just something as music as a performance, music as an absolute experience, music for music's sake, not so much how music functions for film. So it was really Star Wars, and I would say something like Yoda's theme, or the Force theme, or something like I would like the music that I hear from Revenge of the Sith, and then it got into just understanding who he was as a classically trained composer for film. But I hadn't grown up with the major movies like E.T. or Indiana Jones or anything like that. I'm still very much in the infancy of that experience.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm not that well versed in films.
Have you never seen E.T.?
If I did, it was a long time ago.
Wow. That's fascinating. That's
I'm
exciting.
I'm disappointing Birdman, I can see.
There's never a bad time to re-experience these movies. So.
Well, I just watched Ghostbusters with Professor Geek, so that was my first encounter with Ghostbusters, and wow. I enjoyed it.
Wow.
I'm living the experience 40 years after the fact, it seems.
Yeah, absolutely. You should be doing one of those channels where people around your age are just experiencing movies that we've seen about 100 million times for the first time, and they get like millions of views, and they're hilarious to watch.
Yeah.
What? Darth Vader's his father?
Yeah.
What?
That's actually the tragedy that I had with Star Wars. Is I didn't watch Star Wars until 22 years old, and I always knew Darth Vader was Luke's father because it's common knowledge. Everyone knows that. And so I never had the big reveal. It was kind of sad. But,
that is sad.
Yeah.
I saw Star Wars backwards. So I watched Return of the Jedi first. And so I'm like, all of a sudden, it's like, I already know what's going on. So I didn't have that big surprise with Empire either. But then again, I had no idea what the whole backstory was.
You must have Did you feel it was extra weird then when Luke and Leia were kissing?
Yes, it was weird when I saw it. I was like, what's happening? And why is this happening? And is this normal?
You're from the South.
Oh. Yeah. Well, you're
So
from Alabama.
I'm from Alabama. It's okay for
yeah,
me.
it was really odd. But I kind of knew the backstory a bit going into seeing
Yeah.
Return of the Jedi, and I always had those 24-page books on tape and record that
Mhm.
narration and sound effects and dialogue from the movie, which I love. So it was the best way for me to re-experience movies as a kid. So I had those, but I'm not sure whether I had those before I saw Return of the Jedi. But I remember Return of the Jedi was an incredible experience. Whether I
Mhm.
saw the other movies or not, it was stunning. And we saw it at a big old theater in downtown Toronto. It was a 2-story theater, had a big red curtain in front of the screen, and it was just massive, just absolutely massive. And that was a great way to experience that movie for the first time. But seeing I managed to get my son to experience Darth Vader's reveal the right way.
Oh, cool. Good for you.
And yeah, and I made sure that we weren't watching anything else before he fell in love with the prequels. He loved Darth Maul and all that, so he watched that a million
Mhm.
times. But yeah, we managed to get to Empire and all that beforehand, and I managed to even take pictures of his reaction, which was the funniest thing in the world.
Oh, that's good.
Because he was standing there with his lightsaber, his blue one, so he's pretending to be Luke Skywalker, and he's about this close to the television. And then Vader says his line, and he does this 180. He goes, and I'm like, and he's
That's
like,
timeless.
does he really mean? I'm like, he might. And it was just shock, and turned
So
around and he
good.
watched the rest of it. I'm like, we can watch Jedi now if you want to figure out the rest.
Yeah.
But yeah, I managed to experience that with him the right way. So thank goodness I didn't ruin his childhood.
Yeah. Well, I just do appreciate all around the just the themes that, are introduced to us and then they return in very pivotal moments. You were mentioning Schindler's List too.
Mhm.
And even just from what I was hearing of Memoirs of a Geisha, John Williams really knows how to get into kind of a feel of another region of the world,
Yeah.
and kind of have that yearning
Mhm.
inside the instrument he chooses. So
Mhm.
with Memoirs of a Geisha, it's violin and cello, and
Yeah.
with Schindler's List, it's with violin and Itzhak Perlman and
Yeah.
all that good stuff. So
Yeah, he was talking about Memoirs of a Geisha because there was a lot of um, criticism about his music, about it not being, authentic enough. And he said, the music in movies, or just even when you're telling a story, doesn't necessarily have to stick with one region. It's a universal thing. So as long as you're conveying these universal feelings with your music, you don't necessarily have to have, let's say, an authentic instrument from that region in order to convey that emotion. And that's what he wanted to do. And he felt
mhm.
that the best way to do it, and it just came into his mind, was through the cello. But then he knew that he was asked to write a waltz for the chairman. And he's like,
Oh,
well,
that's right.
it's
Yeah,
violin. It's got to be violin.
yeah.
And he had the perfect person for it. Again, it's a combination of Eastern and Western just smashing. And I think it's a wonderful blend of the two in that score. And that's why I love it so much.
It's good.
And so that's where, I mean, again, being authentic, yeah, it helps. But I think that, again, for me, it's the emotion that I get out of film score and in a film. And if you can convey those emotions musically, then I think you've won, no matter how you go about doing it. But you're right; it's just the way that he writes. He's so beyond anybody else. I mean, he's really
Mhm.
concentrating, again, not necessarily on that emotion, but it's what that instrument's going to sound like and how you can orchestrate for that instrument. But also just these long line themes. I mean, if you listen to The Patriot, that goes on forever. That theme, that fiddle theme at
Yeah.
the beginning, just doesn't end. It's like a song that, it takes 2 minutes for it to finally, hit the coda and come back and restart again. And you rarely hear that these days, where some composers will be like, okay, I've got 3 notes and that's enough. That should be good enough for the call of the new Batman or whatever. Whereas John Williams is like, well, how can I explore that character musically, and what type of theme is gonna, and that, well, I mean, again, thematically, the great thing about those long line themes is he's able to then take chunks of bits and pieces here and
Right.
there and sprinkle it throughout the score. I mean, the way he writes a score is he goes backwards. He essentially writes the last cue first, or the end credits, or just that's where everything is going to eventually come to. And so then he's able to just kind of pick up pieces here and there and hint them throughout the film. And I love that. It's whether it's through a rhythm or an orchestration or just a segment of a theme. I love hearing those type of things throughout scores. And then when you finally hear the full development of it, it's just so it's so worth it. And Williams is so good at it.
There are two things I wanted to touch on what you were saying. The first has to do with length and the developments of themes, and something like 2 minutes, people might argue, oh, well, that will make it forgettable. Actually, that's the opposite is true. If you have something with girth and length, musically speaking, it's going to have its own signature, and that's better than like a brief, 4-note or 4-second thing that can just sound redundant in other films. And then on Memoirs of a Geisha, because I saw that movie a long time ago, and I remember liking it, not realizing it was John Williams who had composed it. Maybe I knew and had forgotten. But the idea of sounding authentically Japanese, well, wouldn't it make sense to get John Williams to write an authentically Japanese piece? If you want authentically Japanese, you would go to the world music specialist, hire a Japanese composer who studies strictly authentic music of Japan, not even a Japanese composer who does Western music, for instance. So I think it sounds very, very much that world, like you're in that kind of setting. Very much.
Yeah, I agree. Or else, where else do you want to go? What other part of the world do you want to visit? John Williams?
Far and Away. He did a fine job with that, I think.
Oh my God, yeah. That's that is one that, when you're talking about best scores, I think I'll put Far and Away on the list. That's not a franchise. That's magnificent. I remember seeing that for the very first time at a friend's house. And I mean, I didn't see the whole thing, but
you didn't see it in the theater?
No, I didn't, and I wish I did. But again, it was kind of at a time where I was just sort of getting into soundtracks, or just kind of knew the details. I mean, I always liked soundtracks and film music and films, but to actually own them or study them, it didn't happen until a few years later. But for some reason, there was a signature sound with John Williams, and I just picked that out.
Yeah.
And so I was over at a friend's house and went down to the basement, and their parents are watching this movie. I have no idea what it was. And it was the finale. It was right at the end, where they put the flag into the ground,
the land race and everything.
And I'm like, I know, I've heard this music before. I have this feeling, and John Williams is pounding away with those, Straussian timpanis, and I'm like, hold on a minute, this is John Williams. And of course, the end credits begin. Of course, there's his name. I'm like, what is this movie? How do I see it? And again, not knowing that, I could either go and purchase the soundtrack or anything like that. And it was only a few years later when I started exploring soundtracks that way, through a high school music project that I was working on John Williams. So, went to the library, was researching stuff. And I'm like, well, what's this? This is the soundtrack to such and such, and I can listen to it on my own, and you can buy these things. So, but yeah, Far and Away just gets lost amongst the shuffle just because it wasn't a very popular movie, surprisingly. I mean, especially with, Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise's, power stature back then. You think that would be a huge hit, but it's such an old-fashioned movie too, and the way it's shot and the way it's scored, it's just beautiful. But it gets lost along in those 90s movies, like in between Home Alone and Jurassic Park and Schindler's List. I mean, everybody talks about Hook, but then it's like, where is JFK in that conversation? Where is Far and Away in that conversation? And they all get lost amongst some of those huge hits. But Far and Away it's brilliant. And I mean, working with the Chieftains, I love, Irish music is one of my favorite things ever. And I mean, it better be. I married a Newfie, so I better like Irish themed music. So, and thank God I do. But yeah, the Chieftains are sensational, and the writing is just brilliant. And of course, the land race. I mean, you just think that would have been written already. And I'm shocked just how classic that cue is. I'm just shocked that it took up till 1992 for Williams to write something like that, because it's so brilliant.
And you want to talk end credits far and away.
Oh God, I know.
I would put up there with Temple of Doom.
Yeah, I'd put it up there with that. Empire for sure. Any of the best that just brings a collection of themes together seamlessly. Super stuff. And the film's not that bad, honestly. It's not that bad. I really, really enjoy it. So, and that land race sequence is ridiculous. How they shot that, and 4.5, 5 minutes of just Viz and John Williams music. It's magic.
Have you seen Far and Away, Sound Engraver?
I have probably not seen as much films as I should.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. We'll forgive you.
I'm slowly watching more films as I get older.
Okay. Andrew brings up a good point. Mr. Ken Wanberg died, I believe it was last week. He was a music editor for a very long time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, one of my favorite clips of him, I think it was during the Revenge of the Sith behind the scenes, where he's arguing with the sound editors about trying to lower the sound effects so the music can sound better in the mix. And George Lucas is sitting there. He's like, all right, fine, let's lower the sound effects. And then, all right, they play backs. And, George is like, is that better, Kenny? And Ken's like, yeah, that's all right. And I mean, just, I can't imagine the war that happens between, the music editor and the sound guys just to balance out everything. But there's an interesting point, and I made it on my podcast and during a discussion of Jurassic Park when we did an analysis of it on the show a few months ago. John Williams actually went to Skywalker Ranch in post-production of Jurassic Park and worked with the sound team to make sure that he knew where he could come in and have his music. And even the sound guys could be like, all right, well, you're going to come in here. We will dial things down. And here's the big, the big moment where it's just all sound. And Williams like, forget it. I'm not even going to score this. So, I mean, that's probably why it's so well spotted. And also that the T-Rex sequence is completely unscored. And I think there's a reason behind that. And I would love it if those two teams would come together more often and collaborate that way and realize that, okay, we can really get, music higher in the mix here. Because our sound isn't going to be that crazy. Meanwhile, you might want to avoid this section because we're just going to blow everybody's brains out with sound. Just stay away from it with music because nobody's going to hear it. So I found that really, really fascinating, and that came from the Making of Jurassic Park book.
I would say
and it's fantastic. Yeah, that's
really wise advice, because one example I'm thinking of, it's not John Williams, but the Battle of Helm's Deep. There's like a huge, a stretch of minutes where it's just battle noises. And then when the music comes in, it's not until the Uruk-hai start hanging the ladders on the wall. So, it's getting real. And then I have not seen Dune. I don't really care to see Dune just because I like reading the book so much. But one complaint I had heard was the wash of sound of the music and the sound effects. Like, it was just too loud all the time. And I think composers and sound engineers would behoove them to work together and say, hey, this is my cue for sound. This is what the director wants. This is what the editor wants. This is what the Foley artists want. And how can you have the music enhance that? And how can we help your music and all that?
Yeah, I saw Dune, and there were two portions where the sound was just too overwhelming. And it did push it with the music and the sound effects. You could feel that they were fighting. And
interesting.
There's one of the big action sequences. I mean, I think it's fantastic. I haven't read Dune myself. I saw the 84 movie. I know the story, but I went in it just kind of blind. I didn't even listen to the score. Well, I listened to the Sketchbook album once beforehand, and I hated it. So I went into this movie not really thinking I was going to enjoy it. But that's when I fell in love with not only the movie, which I thought was great, and I can't wait for part 2, and I'm glad they're doing it. But I fell in love with the music, and there's just something about, I mean, I'm a big, 90-piece symphony orchestra guy, classic orchestrations, 19th century romantic music, right? Big leitmotivic thematic scores. That's my thing. I mean, I wouldn't be here if that wasn't it. I mean, we're talking about John Williams for crying out loud. but there's just something about the way that Hans Zimmer crafted this score and the atmosphere that he created. And then again, I'm not really interested in purely atmospheric scores, but I just think the way that it was weaving in and out of the sound and the way it was complementing it. And there are themes that just work magically in the movie that I came home and I spun both of the original soundtrack and the sketchbook, and I did that for 2 weeks straight. I couldn't get enough of it. It would end and I'm like, let's do that again. And there's sometimes where sometimes the most simplistic things can really just, tug on the heartstrings or just give you those feelings. But I think it was also the marriage with the visuals. I mean, stunning. It is a stunning looking movie. I mean,
I think I'll watch the movie like 3 years after I finish the book.
Here's the thing is I am not really a guy who's like, go to the theater and see it. I'm not a big fan of the theater experience. And mostly it's just because, it's too expensive. Trying to bring my kids to go see a movie or whatever. It's just too expensive. Food's too expensive. I would rather just be sitting home in my comfy chair, and I got a sizable television. I got a good sound system. I can get the experience there. However, and I have watched Dune a second time at home. Still great. Not the same thing.
Is it?
For some reason, it's just so immersive. I haven't seen a movie like that probably since Avatar, where Avatar sucked you in with that 3D. Dune didn't need it.
Not even Blade Runner. I heard Blade Runner.
Blade Runner is really good too. Yes, very, very good. And I did see that in the theater, but I didn't have that kind of. I had that sort of. Yeah, that's great. It looks like the '82 movie. It complements it really well. But that wow feeling, the size of scale and scope, and you just know that most of it's like CGI or models, and that's not there. But I was looking at some shots, and I'm like, how did they pull it off so convincingly? And I'm not one, again, that gets overly blown away by special effects these days, because I would rather see a real car chase with real car crashes and not CGI cars. And, the physics don't work. And everything felt like it was shot in camera, even though it wasn't. And it blew my mind. I couldn't believe I was watching some of this stuff and going, they must have filmed this somewhere. They must have gone to the desert and created these monstrous vehicles. They had to. It just looks so good. And that's where I've had a wow moment with CGI in 2021, which just blew my mind. And it's, again, go see it. But I think the best way for you probably to see it then is when part 2 comes out, and hopefully they re-release part 1 again, and then probably see them back to back. Long movie for sure, but I think they get it right. I think they have told this story correctly. It's tough to do everything,
right?
But it's, again, even Zimmer's score. I mean, I know this is a John Williams show, but I mean, you're talking about the world building and creating a particular sound for that movie. If you listen to Dune, it's unmistakable. It's Dune. It's nothing else. To me, it's nothing else, and that's what I loved about it. It felt unique, and it was really, really good.
Taking that point and getting back to Star Wars, or John Williams rather. I think that's what's important for specific. Dune is probably going to become a franchise of some kind. Star Wars, though, has to have that signature sound, and if they deviate from John Williams, it's going to cease to be what it was.
Yeah. So, I mean, are you familiar with The Mandalorian?
Daniel, am I familiar with The Mandalorian?
Somewhat.
Because what you're saying has happened. So
yeah, no, I've actually discussed this at length on my channel. How there's a really big break, but there's been soundtracks with Birdman. Am I saying his name correctly? Michael Giacchino. Is that how you pronounce it? Giacchino.
Okay. Michael Giacchino.
Giacchino.
Like yep.
Thank you, because I just don't know how to pronounce it, and
it's all
I've been
right.
saying it wrong for a long time.
He corrected me straight to my face as well. So, yeah.
But Giacchino and Kevin Kiner are two younger composers that have tried to follow his signature sound for Star Wars, and I think it's pretty important that people look to his methods on theme and length and what all you're saying is
Mhm.
that, with something like with Schindler's List and Memoirs of a Geisha, Patriot, um, he just has the sensibilities of world building when he's composing music. You're in that world. Like E.T., I think even though I haven't seen for many, many years E.T., I could still see it's very interesting. That's an unusual soundtrack in that it actually does sound like late 1800s, post-romantic
Mhm.
Western classical music, but also it works as a science fiction film or science fantasy film in the 1980s. It actually has simultaneously both that feel. It sounds like late 1800s French, Germanic, and then it's really bizarre. The way what he does with that score is really mind bending.
I agree. I think what shocked me the most about it was how operatic that score sounded. I mean, there's
Yes,
times where
yes.
it is so small and so intimate and so lovely. Like the moment that Elliot is luring uh ET with the Reese's Pieces into his bedroom, and all William is playing is just a harp solo with the ET theme. The friendship theme is so beautiful, but right at the beginning, it's massive, and and the thing is about that type of movie again. Williams's score is just able to explode and take over the whole entire movie because you're not really in that film dealing with a ton of sound effects.
Mhm.
So, and I absolutely love the mix of not only the music but the way it's mixed in the film. But when you get to that last 15 minutes, that starts with the chase on the bikes all the way through to the finale and ET's farewell from Elliot. Yeah, it does take on this really operatic, over the top feel, which I think, as I can remember being a kid, that age at that time, that's when I grew up. I grew up in the 80s. I was Elliot's age when that movie came out.
Mm.
And, when I'm, you know, playing on the BMXs or, playing with my toys or whatever, it was just this huge symphonic sound that would follow my adventures in my neighborhood. And it's the most remarkable thing ever is that last shot on Elliot, and the wind's blowing through his hair, and Williams is just unloading the entire symphony orchestra. And it's just so over the top, but it's just this wow moment where you're like, yeah, I want to be Elliot. That's what I've always wanted. That's the adventure I wanted to have, but I always wanted to have that that sound follow me. And I can
Mhm.
remember, being a kid in the 80s and watching, some of my favorite movies that, and I'm not sure if this is going to make any sense, but I always felt that when I heard a symphony orchestra in a film, I was going to take that film a little bit more seriously, whether it was a kid's movie or not. So something like, Die Hard, for instance, very modern, huge action movie, but
Best
it has
Christmas
this,
movie ever.
yeah, but
I'm
it
not
has
part
this
of that debate.
but it has this enormous orchestral score, which you would not hear these days. It would be
No.
some modern whatever.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I hear that sound, and I took that movie much more seriously than I would if it sounded like, like say James Porter's 48 Hours, and there's nothing wrong with 48 Hours or Commando. I mean, thing is, Commando, I don't take seriously, but it's still fun. But that score is very modern, and even though the movie's over the top, I think if you exchanged it out for like a big symphonic score, it would totally change the tone. And for me, there was, again, taking something more seriously. I'd had to pay attention to it. It seemed more important. So that's why ET, with the score that does have, it's still a childhood fantasy, but I just felt that the emotions were like sent to 1,000 in that one, where if you had something else in there, it wouldn't have worked. And yeah,
Actually,
but it was so over the top too, right? It could have just worked against it and not worked, but for some reason it was just, I think it was every kid's
well,
fantasy and dream with that music.
when he goes big with his music for ET, it's not all the way. It's like a fraction of the time. So when finally the farewell happens, and it sounds like an outro of an opera, as you say. And
Yeah.
actually, what Rebecca points out is extremely interesting. So she reads his use of the piccolo solo throughout ET is extremely delicate and intimate, and that contrasts Wagner and his big operatic moments, intimate story and relationship, and huge world building scope. And I think that's important to know, because the dramatic composers like Wagner, he was big with a lot of musical activity for most of the time, whereas the Italian operatic composers, and French too, but I know a little bit more about the Italian. They were big and bombastic when they had to be, but very, 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 very intimate when they also had to be. And I think not Wagner. I think John Williams took those cues, when to be very sparse, when to be very intimate, when it had to be, when to use silence, when to use very, very few instruments, and then when to use the whole orchestra. Now, I will say with ET, and this might be true of Star Wars and maybe Indiana Jones, maybe not, but ET is using the entire range of the violin. So if I have my violin right here. I'm not going to demonstrate it as far as the notes, but you know where the black fingerboard ends, and then it's suspended in midair before it reaches the bridge. That's how high you're playing that main melody of ET. And you have to play loud, and you have to play clearly. And he just he would demand pretty much every instrument there.
That's an interesting point, because you can
low.
almost seem like, that point in the violin could be far too saccharine or really overly sweet. And I've heard, rumors that even during recording sessions, I'm not sure whether it was with Alfred Newman or not, because he got high up on the violin as well. They would make remarks and start hissing and whistling at him because it was just way too melodramatic and over the top, especially with with that type of writing. But there's I know exactly the sound you're talking about, and it's definitely a key moment. It's when the bikes are lifted off, and ET saves the kids and then takes them back to the forest, and it's just, yeah, Williams is just full throttle. Everything's happening at that moment. I mean, there's an incredible chase cue, which again, I mean, it's very Howard Hanson, but still beyond that. The one thing that Williams does so well as well is his hitting those sync points, finding those moments where he can accentuate a moment in the movie. My favorite, easily one of my favorite sync point hits that John Williams does is doing a tumble along with either the strings or the woodwinds as the bikes are jumping over the dirt,
the dirt hills,
dirt hills, and he does these falls down the instrument, like but they happen at odd times, right? It almost seems like they are almost out of sync, but he manages to then bring it back. It's sort of the same thing like with the Superman main title. He hits on a couple of splashes of color during the main title, and he does it with the bells, and it's really neat. But they are out of sync with the actual timing and rhythm of the piece. So they kind of happen off beat, which is really weird.
That's actually,
I love that.
That's a technical term called the hemiola, if I'm thinking correctly. With ET for the piano part, I think there's a moment. Well, there's a length where it's the right hand I think is playing duple or sets of two, while the left hand is playing sets of three. So you've got three against two going simultaneously.
Is that kind of rolling sound that
it does?
Created, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's like the end credits. Yeah. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. But I love that. I mean, that's a skill that only a film composer can really do. Just hitting those moments and accentuate. Like, I mean, Williams does it all the time. And anytime someone's falling, he's falling down the strings, like, Willie and Indy over the in Short Round over the cliff, right? Over the cliff. It's beautiful. It's a fall on the strings, but it's actually the love theme that's being played. And the way the love theme is played is it falls down the scale. And I absolutely love that sort of stuff. And he does the same thing in Minority Report. Tom Cruise does a fall during that action sequence, and Williams falls down with the strings. And I love that type of Mickey Mousing. I think it's fantastic. Not too many people do it. Some composers will play through a cue, which is fine. It works. But I love it when there's those details.
If you do it though, you have to do it well.
Yes.
Or it would come off probably a little cheesy.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. But it's yeah, it's picking those moments, and Williams does it so well. And I can't think of any time where it's like it was cheesy. Ever. It ever happened.
One thing to look for listeners who just enjoy music and maybe not have the analytical perspective is that Williams does something that you actually you're starting to hear less and less as the decades go by, especially this decade. He uses wide intervallic jumps. So with Superman, it's he leaps from the first degree to the 11th degree or to the major seventh.
Yep.
And I'm not going to hum right now, but it's actually quite high.
You can.
No.
Dun, 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 dun,
Dun,
dun,
dun,
dun,
dun,
dun.
dun, dun, dun. Yeah. It's that seventh leap. Yep. It's
Yeah,
either the fifth or seventh, right? With John
Yeah,
Williams.
no, actually, yeah, well, it's a major seventh, so it's 11 semitones up. So he doesn't quite reach that octave, and
Right.
if he did reach that octave, it would be even higher just by a little bit. But you actually don't hear even composers jumping to a sixth or a minor seventh that much anymore. You actually, and it's been happening with pop artists a lot with their songwriting, where their melodies are just not moving more than this. And now we're actually hearing it with a lot of things like electronic music, with even with the Mandalorian score, with his more ambient stuff. You just do not hear intervallic relationships. Like you don't hear a skyline or a contour. And we have to go back to John Williams for that. Those huge melodic jumps. I mean, like with E.T. at the end, he's going up like 13ths and 15ths from already a high position in the E string. It's like it's crazy.
You're right.
Again, you have to do it well, but it should be
Absolutely.
done.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Oh, bye, AL. It's good to see you.
What about Indiana Jones? I know there's 2 Indiana Jones fans in the stream.
Yeah, I don't know. I think those movies suck.
Okay.
Yeah, because of the portraits. I don't know the whole soundtrack. It's kind of you'd be surprised. Soundtracks with Birdman. I actually pay more attention to the story in a film than the music. But again, like it is with Ghostbusters, I haven't seen Indiana Jones either.
Any of them?
So Professor Geek has a long endeavor with me. Yeah.
I'm gonna have a talk with him. Like,
I don't know. I think we need to do a rewatch of Indiana Jones and just see her reactions for the very first time. And by the way, talking about not paying attention to the music, good luck with that during the map room sequence.
Okay,
yeah.
so that's okay. That's the thing. Is like actually, I feel like.
Oh no, and I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah.
If you're not noticing the music, then it's really doing its job. It's doing its job well. I understand what you're talking about. Yeah.
So something like the Star Wars crawl. It's like, well, it's just text against space, so you can pay attention to the music super well. Now, as far as the theme, it's iconic and memorable.
Yep.
Okay. Well, the map room at dawn is like a religious experience in sight and sound. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It is. I mean, if there's one question I can ask Steven Spielberg was like, did you purposely edit that sequence just so you can hand this over to John Williams and say, all right, do your
Go
job.
to town. Yeah.
Go to town. Enjoy this one. I'm handing this gift to you. Enjoy. It really is magical because it's just visuals and music, nothing else. It's a wonderful.
Now I like those. Yeah. I like those sequences. I mean,
but it also gets a great mix. The thing is, it's impossible not to notice. For an action film, it's really, really incredibly well mixed, and but everything about that film is iconic and new, and I mean, there's punch sounds that you've never heard before, gun sounds you never heard before, sound effects you never heard before, but the music, even just the way it's recorded as well. Eric Tomlinson, the UK engineer who was doing a lot of stuff with the LSO back then, just the way he recorded, he recorded a way that music would pierce through sound effects for some reason. Very wide recordings too. Like it was like the trumpets are completely dialed hard to the right, and French horns to the left, and everything is just like, it's so expansive, and it just somehow is able to just pierce through every sound effect. And that's why Star Wars sounds so good. Those original Star Wars movies sound so good. And Raiders sounds amazing. But yeah, Raiders is, again, it's a very different type of action score. I mean, the opening action track is pizzicato strings. That's it. That's all it is.
That's
Like,
interesting.
what is happening here? Until I'm not going to ruin it for you, but I mean, that's your opening track. There's even like the most comedic action cue you've ever heard. And
We'll watch it this year.
Yeah, we should watch. I would love to see your reactions, because I think it's fascinating. I mean, I think I mentioned it before on the show. One of my favorite things of all time is watching movies that I've loved forever and showing them my kids for the first time, and watching movies through their eyes. And so getting to see, like, Star Wars, my kids watching it for the first time. I'm not watching the movie, I'm watching them. It's like, how are they going to react? Did they react the way I reacted? That's the fun.
I'd have to ask Professor Geek. He would probably want me to geek out with him first.
I understand that.
Before
Yeah.
the rewatch.
Well, I think it'd be great if we came back and you tell us what you think, because I'm fascinated. I mean, because it's a 1981 movie. You don't see too many people meet too many people that haven't seen it before.
Yeah.
And I would just love to hear your reactions. Yeah.
I'm sure, there's a handful of movies that are just crazy famous. Like, how could you not have watched this? I'm like, I didn't grow up in the 80s.
Right. You're right. And I mean, but I'm interested in your perspective, because that's one of the first things I ever saw, and I fell in love with it instantly. It's still my favorite thing ever. And will you be as apologetic as I am towards Temple of Doom? Like, it'd be crazy if you watched the whole sequence and you picked Kingdom of the Crystal Skull as your favorite. It blew my mind. You know what I mean? But again, it's that generational thing, and it depends on when you see it. I'm curious. I'm curious to see, a grown adult watching these movies for the first time.
Temple of Doom, though.
Sorry?
I don't know anyone who hates Temple of Doom.
Oh, I know plenty. Oh my God. Yeah, it is literally you love it or hate it. Or you're an apologetic, Temple of Doom fan, which is what I will defend this thing to the death. I mean, I don't know. Did you ever listen to the episode I did with Jeff on Temple of Doom?
Mm-hmm.
That was one of my favorite things I ever did, because he's like, you just say whatever you want to say. And it was 60 minutes of me just yakking on and defending this film.
I was listening to that at like 5 a.m. on a Wednesday morning, and I'm like, I don't know who this Eric Woods guy is, but he's my bestest friend.
Yeah, it got some hate. Spielberg hates it. He said the best thing that came out of that was finding his wife, Kate Capshaw. That's the only memory he has of it. So,
the
filmmakers were all going through bad divorces. They were all in bad moods, but it made for such a great,
awesome,
different movie.
Oh,
yeah.
my Lord.
I would love to see more angry directors direct movies, because they just create, like, just be in the worst possible moment of their lives, and then just them go, show us what you got. And it is what it is. It's called the Temple of Doom for a reason. It's fantastic.
I will say, I will give John Williams credit for this, is that he just knows how to make a memorable melody, because like everyone who's so invested, who grew up with Indiana Jones, who played Indiana Jones in their backyard, who just loved Indiana Jones. Yeah. and it's kind of, I'm coming at from the other side, where I don't know anything about Indiana Jones, but I know verbatim the theme, because it's everywhere. It's really ubiquitous. Everyone seems to know it. And that's actually what a good composer does, is that their melody is right there. I don't know if it's like, as you guys love Indiana Jones, does that melody fit the character and his adventures and stuff? Yeah. That's what I thought.
I was thinking about that. There are so many composers that tried to duplicate that sound, creating that adventure theme, and it just comes off as cheesy. I mean, really, really cheesy. But for some reason, Williams found the right notes. He found the exact right notes. And on top of that, he wrote 2 themes And Spielberg literally said, well, why can't we use both? So there are two themes to Indiana Jones's theme. There's an A and a B theme.
Oh, okay.
And both of them are fantastic, but both of them could easily have been super cheesy. But for some reason, Williams picked just the right notes, the right orchestrations. And if anybody else tried it, it probably wouldn't have worked.
Mhm.
I don't know why. I don't know how Williams manages to do it. But that theme, again, as a march, for crying out loud, for a movie of that sort, and for you to take that movie seriously, it is tonally perfect. That's the best way I can say it. Any deviation, one semitone here or there, it would have changed the whole outlook of that movie. And I've seen so many other, like, there's nothing against Jerry Goldsmith's King Solomon's Mines. I mean, because that's basically his Indiana Jones. But that theme it's a fun theme, but it seems rather cheesy. The movie is extremely cheesy as well. But I don't know if there's anybody that's been able to duplicate that sort of adventure theme in a march style without you thinking that's cornball.
Well, that's another thing about John Williams that makes it so interesting, is that we all love things like Star Wars, and you guys love Indiana Jones, and I don't know how campy Indiana Jones is. I know for the original trilogy, especially the first episode of the original trilogy of Star Wars, it's campy. It's campy humor. But if John Williams took it as such, if he just wanted to musically imitate something that was campy humor, and then really dumbed it down, we wouldn't even be talking about something like Star Wars today. And I think he just took, even in the setting, the kind of setting, like that Flash Gordon kind of setting, or whatever was inspiring George Lucas, he was taking his music very seriously. He was saying, I'm going to go back to Holst, I'm going to go back to Stravinsky, and I want to see what I can do with this. He always treated Star Wars like a musical drama in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not, but that's the level of the music.
And Rebecca, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, sorry. The note that George Lucas had was like, we gotta convey the emotions in this movie, because look at the history of Star Wars. I mean, that thing was a mess until other people basically took a hold of it and molded it into what it was. So it definitely is Star Wars. As much as it's a brainchild of George Lucas, it is a combination of so many great artists piecing things together to make that movie the classic that it is. And I think George Lucas even knew that the music could possibly save the film, because it was a mess. Nobody liked it. And I think the temp track, although it's the every composer hates the temp track, track I think helped him. And even Williams, I think, mentions that in the liner notes of the original LP, where he's like, I had the temp track, and that's when I knew exactly what George wanted. And he was talking about, one, melody was super important, and then the orchestra was second. Not saying that it was a secondary thing. It's just, first we had to concentrate on the melody and get that melody, and then write the emotion. And it had to be symphonic. George was clear in saying, I don't want concrete music. I don't want electronic music. We're going to do a 180, right?
Thank goodness it's not concrete music.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but that's what science fiction was like back in the 70s, right? So
yeah, I'm working on a synthwave track right now. I'm trying my hand at synthwave for the first time. I love synthwave. I love retrowave. I like that old style, but it just I'm sure it's on YouTube, floating on YouTube somewhere, where you've got like Luke Skywalker going into the Death Star, crevice or whatever it is.
Yeah, the trench run.
The trench. Thank you for the trench run, and then hearing synthwave beats in the background. It wouldn't work at all.
It changes it. Yeah, I mean, you put Benny Hill behind it, it's just a whole other thing. Yeah, it's again, you're talking about utter perfection, and Williams found it for Star Wars. But we were talking about this earlier. It is finding that right sound, that right tone to help tell that story. And I don't think there's a moment where Williams was ever off in his career of not being able to single that out. He was always perfect in capturing small moments. Like, for instance, I'm not all too familiar with The Book Thief. I've only listened to that score a few times, and it's one of the rare Williams scored movies that I haven't seen. But he was making mention that, of course, one of the most important aspects of that film is the book. The main character has a book, and then she goes out and searches for more books through World War II. And what Williams wanted to do was cut through that devastation. He wanted to cut through the brutality of war and get to the heart of the story, which was the books. And so he wrote this little piano, what he called a code, that would signify the books. So, you knew that we're not concentrating on Lisa's surroundings, which is war-torn Germany, but it's her imagination and where the books are taking her. And Williams decided that he wanted something that was a little bit more intimate and gentle to help convey that story and take you as an audience member away from all of the crap that this character Lisa is dealing with, and how she's getting away from it all through her books and discovering books. And I thought that was just magical to hear him talk about it that way. The amount of thought that goes into the preparation of his scores, I think, is absolutely fascinating.
That's another thing that we have to look at is intimacy. Intimacy in music is something you'll find less and less these days too. So to be able to pull someone into someone's thought process, like a protagonist's thought process, instead of the war-torn city around them, is actually not. You would actually have to think a little bit more intuitively as a composer to make that call, and you'll find less and less of that as it goes, as film music goes on.
I agree.
I've actually noticed, the Star Wars and Indiana Jones themes. I actually noticed of all the different themes that John Williams has made, those two are the only ones where there's actually some overlap between those two.
Oh, as far as similarity?
Yeah, because when I listen to like Indiana Jones, the theme for Indiana Jones, I can hear some elements of the Star Wars theme or some music from the Star Wars movies.
I think that has to do with the orchestration, because both themes are played by a trumpet, and there's a rhythmic section pattering underneath the melody before it digresses into more of the orchestra.
Yeah,
as well.
Because if I listen to something like from Jurassic Park, there's no way I'm hearing like Star Wars or Indiana Jones in that, even though it's the same composer.
Yeah, Williams's sound definitely has evolved over his career, and all musicians, their style and music usually evolves and changes. 77 to about 84, that Williams had a very distinct sound, and I mean, you could instantly tell it was a John Williams score. I never mistaken Star Wars with Indiana Jones, but I know many people that have mistaken Star Wars and Superman. And those two came out a year,
sense.
And they're very similar.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh,
and but
the thing is, I usually hear Superman and Indiana Jones sound similar sometimes. Like not the whole score, just like the main theme itself.
Mm-hmm. I can hear that too.
Yeah, and they're all marches, right? Star Wars is a march.
Yeah.
Superman's a march. Raiders is a march. What other marches did he? 1941 was a march. What other? He did so many marches.
Midway
march. That's right. So
I'm trying to think of Patriot, but that wasn't really.
No, Patriot was more of that kind of colonial sound, that kind of Copland-esque Americana sound, and that's beautiful. I think that's one of his more underrated melodies. I mean, we talked about it, but it's just so gorgeous. I'm glad we got it. I mean, that's the other thing. It had to come to the expense of another composer, because David Arnold worked with Roland Emmerich for 3 films before he got booted on the Patriot, and I would love to hear what David Arnold would have done.
And are we ever going to get Arnold's score released, do you think?
For Patriot?
Yeah.
No, he wrote a demo and that's it. They didn't like it, so it was never recorded. Much like Cutthroat Island, I think he wrote a demo for that one, and he got the boot. So, but yeah,
I would like to bring up Rebecca's point real fast. I always felt those leaps in his melodies represented the hero's journey, big jump, and then a descending, meandering melody. These are in all of his famous scores. I think that's a very good point. Dan
Golding of the Art from the Score podcast, Dan Golding, he did a video on the famous leap, the heroic leap, and why
Yeah.
John Williams's melodies for those films are heroic. And it's more of a musicologist view on the creation of those scores. It's really interesting. So yeah, if you're on Twitter, check out Dan Golding. And if you love film scores, check out Art of the Score. It's a fantastic podcast on film music.
Oh, podcast. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
But Dan Golding is a conductor.
I have also
out in
noticed
Australia.
with you have multiple John Williams's like scores that he does for specific franchises, like Indiana Jones, Star Wars, and Jaws. I've noticed Jurassic Park's the only one where the first movie is the only instance where the score itself is made for that movie, and if you try and put it into another movie, then it ends up not really working. You know, like with Jurassic World, where that just copy and pastes the score.
Yeah, I did not
Because
care for Jurassic World.
Park was so tied to the story of that first movie, it doesn't work when you take it out.
That's so interesting that both Matthew said that and then also Daniel saying his sentiments, because as a kid, I remember seeing, again, any movies I had seen, it was like long time ago, but I remember even as a kid, as I was studying classical music, I never really truly cared for the Jurassic Park theme.
Yeah.
I feel like it could work in a film, but like out of all the music that I've heard with John Williams, I feel like that is like the most I want to say this carefully, the most Disneyfied version. Like it just sounds, he uses very specific lines and very specific intervallic relationships that a lot of Disney sitcoms were doing back in the day of like the 90s. It has this like quirky science fantasy sitcoms.
I actually don't get that vibe, but then again, I didn't watch any of the Disney like sitcoms or anything like that. So
yeah,
I
grew up
don't
in the
have any
90s.
perspective on that.
So here's a few questions. So you have seen Jurassic Park?
Long time ago.
Okay.
So I won't remember the
I have
score.
the first three right here.
So I mean, the big takeaway for me especially with the Jurassic Park main theme, and I think it totally goes against what I think you would hear in a movie of this sort.
Yeah.
And the main reason why it is so gentle when you first see that brachiosaur for the first time, I think that takes you off guard. Right?
Yeah.
You're expecting to see the monster movie dinosaurs that we're all used to.
Yeah.
But then you're seeing this beauty, but it's also because it's a herbivore. It's not a meat eater. So those animals in the movie get the most gentle music because they are not threatening at all. They're not going to eat you.
Yeah.
On the other side, you get this incredible 4-note motif, which is just it's underlining the whole entire score, and it's there. But that's the raptor music.
Yeah.
That's the T-Rex music.
Yeah.
And it's just
that.
almost like under the water, right? It's almost like Jaws.
Yeah.
And anytime you hear it, you're like, oh wait, hold on a minute, they're near. So that's what I like. I love the contrast compared to other scores that would do something where it's more scary. And I love that Spielberg decided that we're going to concentrate first on the beauty of these animals, and then halfway through we will scare the bejesus out of you.
I thought that on that note, I did think that the music, especially the theme, as you say, gentle, because that's the right word for it. I always thought that was the human relationship with these creatures.
Oh, very much
too.
so. Yes. Yeah. That awe and wonder. And you could see it the way that Spielberg shot it. I mean, there's a great shot of Sam Neill, looking up and the camera's pushing in on him, and then we see that expansive shot of all the other animals, hanging around in the pond there, and it's almost religious, very religious experience, especially for
and
Grant.
Like the music itself just can't contain itself.
Sorry,
you can't get that vibe early on when it's like it's playing, and then it gets to that point and it just goes wild.
Yeah, it's that build up of
quiet for a moment, then bursts out again.
Yeah, I think that's our anticipation as well. I mean, we've been dying to see dinosaurs, and they're supposed to be amazing, and it's taken 15, 20 minutes for us to finally get to the point where we see one, because that whole attack at the beginning, we're just seeing eyeballs and we're not really sure what the raptors look like. But then it's also our expectation and our release as well. And Williams is conveying that through his music. Spielberg's doing that through the visuals. And we find like, oh my God, look at this. And I mean, seriously, is this not impressive? Because I was absolutely blown away by all the special effects in this. I can remember seeing the trailer for the first time and that shot of the T-Rex coming across the jeeps, and wondering how they made animatronics move so smoothly, and literally, we had no idea what computer generated effects were. So that's what was so great about watching that, is it's like, I have no idea how they did this, but it's like, I want to know. But now that I do, and I'm like, okay, can I go back to the time when I didn't know?
In that film, they don't just completely go with the CGI. They kind of use some some still practical effects, and they use like the T-Rex. It's nighttime, so it's kind of hiding the limitations of the effects.
Yeah, and that's the genius behind this movie, is that you're working with top tier special effects team. You got Stan Winston and his creature effects people who are creating the dinosaurs, and they know exactly what they're doing. But then you also have that whole entire team behind ILM who are essentially experimenting on this movie, much like they did on Star Wars, because they had no idea what world they were doing on Star Wars either. So this is all brand new.
Enough that they really know what they could do, so they didn't overuse it.
I'm still blown away that to this day, I still think Jurassic Park has some of the most convincing CGI I've ever seen. And that's a 1993 movie, and that's the infancy of CGI. That whole attack on the Jeeps, it's a combination of CGI and live action. I have never seen anything equal that ever.
I will never understand why Jurassic World still had the big animatronics, but they covered them in CGI. Right. So you can tell that there's something real there, but you can also see the CGI. It's really weird.
Matthew, I
don't know why they did that.
My problem with Jurassic World was the music, and I'll like a brief explanation why. Like Eric was just saying, in Jurassic Park, you didn't get the Jurassic Park theme proper like 15, 20 minutes into the movie. Jurassic World, at the beginning's kind of meandering around, parents getting a divorce, who cares? Kids are going off to the island, who cares? Anyway, they get there, and as soon as before they even get to the island on the boat, you get the full on Jurassic Park theme, and you've got it for like 10 minutes, and then they see a dinosaur. I'm like, and I don't think that was Michael Giacchino's thought. I'm sure some executive said you need to put more theme music in here, and they did.
Jurassic World is kind of a case of them doing the same thing as with The Force Awakens, where they were more interested in just recapturing the magic of the original rather than telling their own story.
And I feel like they were beating me over the head with the music, and it wasn't used appropriately. Yeah, that was my problem.
At that point, I'd rather just go back and watch the original.
Right. Yeah. But I thought that even though the second Jurassic World movie was utter trash, I think
I didn't even watch that one.
is much better. But he wanted to convey that what was it, like a Bernard Herrmann mixed with like B movie monster music, like James Bernard and all those type of movies. And I think he did it incredibly successfully. It's a great score. It really is. I mean, I'm not a fan of Jurassic World, the first one, and I honestly can't stand Giacchino's theme for it. There's something that just irritates me about it. But the second score, I think if you get a chance to listen to it, it's really, really good. Another score in the Jurassic Park series that doesn't get enough love is Don Davis's Jurassic Park 3. That's talk about taking someone's ideas and then just going with it. I mean, you got Don Davis at the height of his fame.
John Williams didn't do Jurassic Park 3.
Sorry, you don't know why?
I didn't know John Williams didn't do.
Jurassic Park 3. He recommended Don Davis to do 3. 3 was directed by Joe Johnston. I'm shocked that he didn't pick James Horner, but maybe Horner was busy. But Don Davis was, I mean, like I said, at the height of his fame at the moment, coming off The Matrix, and the score that he wrote is just it's a hyper active score. It's on adrenaline right from the beginning. But
I'm probably an outlier because I actually really like Jurassic Park 3.
I love 3 as well. I do too. I think it's fantastic. And again, I love the creature effects. It's still mixing those Stan Winston animatronics with CGI, and it does it so brilliantly. And I love the Spinosaur. I love the adventure. I think it's fun. I think it's a fun movie.
Now speaking of dinosaurs and James Horner, I did grow up with Land Before Time.
That's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking when you were talking about Jurassic Park.
And the music is wonderful.
Yes, it is, because that's the first time again where it's very gentle, right? It's very, very gentle lullaby type music for dinosaurs. And we've never heard that before. And I mean, that's an iconic score. It's just absolutely iconic. And it's an iconic movie as well. And I know what you're thinking. So I thought that you were going to make the contrast between that and Jurassic Park.
Well, back to the theme on Jurassic Park. I'm not saying I dislike it, because actually the even though I don't really remember the movie myself, having watched it long time ago, and you're in a basement with kids playing games, you're not really watching the movie. But it does kind of give me the impression of Homeward Bound. Like,
interesting.
It's like an adventure kind of embarkment of like animal creature. Like, it has that 90s sentimental feel. It's a very 90s feel. Like,
yeah, it is one of those ones where you feel good after you've watched it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Despite the fact the movie does have a lot of flaws.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, there's another thing that we're not even talking about, which is that island theme. I mean, you're talking about it, finally getting to see the dinosaurs, but I mean, for that whole 8-minute sequence, the moment that we're flying into the island and then seeing the dinosaurs, John Williams has introduced you to his two main themes in full, and that's just absolutely remarkable as well. But I love the island theme. I think that's fantastic. That whole flight through the forest and the island, and it's with Williams's music is great as well.
Andrew brings up his top 5 non-franchise scores: Angela's Ashes, Empire of the Sun, The Fury, Dracula, and Hook. That makes me ask a question. Eric, what John Williams theme do you consider to be your own personal theme?
Oh my God! Wow.
And don't say the Raiders March.
No, and I wouldn't. I definitely feel Cadillac of the Skies.
Are you serious?
But I do. Well, yeah.
Did you read my notes? Okay.
And I'm just thinking it off the top of my head. It's a very personal movie because it's my dad's favorite film of all time, and I only found that out.
Holy crap!
10 years ago, where he told me, like, I love Empire of the Sun, and anytime I played it on my radio show, I mean, he listened to when I was on FM, he listened to it, and he once requested Empire of the Sun, and he says, I want to play it because it's my favorite movie of all time. I'm like, what? I never knew that, Dad. But the thing is, he is like a World War II fanatic, loves that. But the other cool thing is that where I used to live and where my parents live right now, it's Hamilton, Ontario. And what they have is a warplane museum. And so has all these old planes from World War II. And but one thing that they also have is the Lancaster, the Avro Lancaster, giant bomber. I mean, these things used to fly all over the place. Used to fly from England to Berlin and Germany and just bomb the shit out of them. Sorry, the crap out of them. And they used to carry this 9,000-pound bomb in its belly. Anyway, so my dad and my grandfather, they had a fascination with airplanes. And the cool thing is that in Hamilton, you knew when the Lancaster was coming out. Now, the thing about the Lancaster, it's only one of 2 in the entire world that actually fly. There are 3 of them in the world. One is grounded, and I think it's in Australia. The other one, the Lancaster's sister airplane, is in the UK, and it's the only other one that can actually fly. And so they have a very distinct sound because they have Rolls-Royce engines. And so when you heard them starting up, it doesn't matter wherever you were in Hamilton, and Hamilton is a sizable city. There's like 500,000 people. But you can tell when this thing is revving up at the airport from miles and miles away. Wow. People would stop in the streets and or come out of their house and look up in the sky, and it would fly around just on test runs. Wow. And it was the most mesmerizing thing. And sometimes you'd have Spitfires following it. And I can remember this is my childhood. Like, we would visit my grandparents in Hamilton, and at times, usually on Saturdays, they would do a fly around the city, just testing this thing out. But it's the most enormous, beautiful thing I've ever seen. So taking that visual and then seeing the way that Jim reacts in Cadillac, in Empire of the Sun during the Cadillac of the Sky sequence, which again is a very it essentially didn't happen. And this is another note that I found out about Empire of the Sun. Whenever time you hear music, it's Jim's imagination. Anytime you don't hear music, it actually happened. So the whole point of the movie is that you're seeing it through child's eyes. And what do children do? They over exaggerate their stories. So there's a moment in Empire of the Sun where the Americans are bombing this the Japanese airfield, and Jim, he's 8, 9, 10 years old. Christian Bale plays him.
Batman himself.
Batman himself. So he jumps on top of a building and he's watching this bombing run, and he's seeing these planes just ripping by back and forth. Well, there's a moment where everything just goes into slow motion, and he sees the plane that he's always wanted to see, the P-51, which is the Cadillac of the skies. And he looks and he can see the pilot look over to him and wave just before he drops a bomb. Jim loses his mind. Now, again, it's all scored with this very angelic, religious music. And you can't tell whether this actually happened or not. It probably didn't. But that's the sort of feeling that I had when seeing those planes in the air anytime in Hamilton. Getting to see, I mean, living in a city where you can see these things flying around all the time is a very unique experience. And I'm sure we all have these unique experiences wherever we are in, what city we live in. We always have something special that somebody else can't see. So I was honored that I got a chance to see, and still do see, the Lancaster. And I've actually been in it. I've flown beside it because I'm a videographer. So at one point, I was in a helicopter flying side by side with the Lancaster. I was just like, what is happening? But wow. Empire of the Sun is always playing in my head. That Cadillac of the Sky sequence, that whole, religious, that point where the orchestra dips down and all you're hearing are the voices. I know it's a long explanation, but that's just why that film, one, it's my dad's favorite movie. It's the association with the planes that I used to see in Hamilton, and just being a kid and having that wild imagination. That sort of sums me up. That, and of course there's Field of Dreams, but that's James Horner. We can talk about that some other time.
What do you think about the concert piece John Williams did for Cadillac of the Skies?
Oh, I think it's great because you're melding two major cues together.
Yeah.
Because Cadillac of the Skies basically dies after 90 seconds, right? The actual film cue.
Yeah.
It gets very dark. And again, you're coming back into real life with Jim, where he realizes that he can't remember what his mother looks like. And I mean, after such an incredible experience, right? He just starts break down crying, and he's been away from his folks so long that he doesn't know what they look like. So I love the concert piece on the Spielberg Williams album. And when I was on another podcast, that's the cue I chose to play. I said, you have to play this. I remember hearing it for the very first time, and the feelings, I nearly broke down crying. And I'm in high school, for crying out loud, just listening to this for the first time. Like, this is when I first discovered soundtracks where you can actually listen to them and buy them, or listen on your own. And I got the Spielberg Williams disc, and Empire of the Sun came on. I'm like, what is this?
That's a wonderful album.
Yes, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
So that just blew me away. But yeah. So what's your story behind Empire of the Sun?
Well, for me, it would be like Toy Planes, Home and Hearth. That track, like the piano. Yeah. High school sucked for me. Horrible. And I've always had problems with depression. And I got Empire of the Sun in 10th grade. Yeah, 10th grade. On cassette tape back in the day. And I got, because it was John Williams, and you just buy anything with John Williams' name on it. And I listened to it. I'm like, this is different from Indiana Jones, and it's different from Star Wars. It's got some action-y cues, like the Streets of Shanghai. But the tone is different. But I kept listening to it a lot, and I really did enjoy it. But 10th grade was all of high school was exceptionally bad. I guess I can't pinpoint one year that was better than the other. But the Toy Planes, Home and Hearth, just that piano, it just always stuck with me. And like, whenever like shit goes crappy bad, you just sit down and you're just like, you got the weight of the world on you. Toy Planes, Home and Hearth always just like comes to my mind every single time. And I guess I always kind of identified with Jim to some degree because he didn't have the best of life. And the byline on the movie poster was, to survive in the world at war, a boy must find a strength greater than the events that surround him. And in the movie, he starts out as an atheist. And I've never been an atheist. I've always been, believed in God and been Catholic. But through the course of the movie, he grows. And, when he sees the atom bomb go off, he's like, he thought Mrs. Baker's soul was going to heaven. And I guess he thought he was seeing God. And I always kind of thought he grew into faith through adversity. And that had a lot of meaning to me in high school and still today as a 47-year-old man. And I guess like the one film character I've always thought of myself of is not Indiana Jones and not Han Solo. It was always Jim, just a scared little boy trying to survive in a world that's just crazy as shit. And you just got to have faith, and you just got to keep going. So,
yeah, it's I think it's a movie everybody needs to see. It's one of Spielberg's most misunderstood movies, which is too bad. People
it gets no love.
Get it. They didn't get it. It's much like AI. AI was something that took me 3 or 4 viewings to like going, all right, I understand it now, because I was very dismissive of that film. But Empire of the Sun, when I first saw it, it was another one where I was like, I think I was too young to understand it completely. And I was a teenager when I saw it, but I'm like,
I was too.
I don't get it. I knew it was good, but I was so used to a different type of Spielberg. And then I think I did see this after Schindler's List. Schindler's List was transformative for me. But Empire of the Sun was like, there's certain aspects of this movie which I think went over my head. A little bit more adult, the way that he was shooting things. I'm like, I'm not understanding why he's doing this. But it wasn't until much later that I read up on the movie and understood it a little bit more. Did it finally basically reveal its secrets? And I think it's an extraordinary achievement. It's one of his great epics. It is definitely an epic. It's up there, like with those David Lean was supposed to direct it. It feels like a David Lean movie. And it just, but it's
why
fascinating.
Why is it not 2.35?
Sorry?
Why is it not 2.35?
There was a reason behind that. It had to do with the scope of it. He felt that he could fit more in that 1.85. Yeah. There's a certain reason why he shoots in that aspect ratio for certain films. Even the same thing with Jurassic Park. He felt that I think the only way that he could actually frame up a dinosaur the best way was in the 1.85. But Spielberg is an amazing widescreen shooter. But I think that I'm trying to think of what Empire would look like as a widescreen movie. I think that would be incredible. Yeah. But I think Color Purple was also 1.85, right?
I never saw Color Purple.
Oh, you never saw Color Purple?
Mm-hmm.
See, that's another contrast between you can see Spielberg maturing. He's too immature to do Color Purple, in my opinion. He shot that like an old school Hollywood film. It was just too flashy. He was trying to do too much for that movie. It's still very good, especially in its performances, but he was also too afraid to tackle certain subject matter, which is disappointing. But then he gets on Empire of the Sun. It's a very personal story to him. And you can see that at that moment, Spielberg changes. He turns into a totally different director. He still has that kind of youthful enthusiasm. So he, will explore in movies like Jurassic Park and Hook and Last Crusade. But Spielberg changes as a filmmaker for Empire of the Sun. And then I think he needed Empire of the Sun to lead him towards Schindler's List. But Empire's a change. He became a dramatic director at that point, or knew how to properly direct a dramatic film, purely dramatic movie. But again, I think that also it's like I said, very personal to him. It's World War II. It's children. It's children's imagination. I think it's a fabulous film, and it's an incredibly unique movie as well. I haven't seen anything like it before, but you have to understand the character, and you have to understand who wrote the book in order to fully understand the film. And that sucks. I mean, you should really just be able to watch a movie without having to do any research. But I think if you understand the way that they attacked this film and the way it looks and why it looks the way it does and the way it's told, you'll be better for it. So that's to anybody who hasn't seen Empire of the Sun.
Thank you, Jack, for the compliment. Don't remember seeing your name before. Thank you for coming by. Thank you for watching the videos. Sound Engraver.
Yes.
What's your answer? And don't say Empire of the Sun.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't have that kind of explanation behind it if I did. That's cool. That's very inspiring. I'm
amazed we're like on this at the same movie. I'm like,
that's crazy.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, I will say that I just do not know film composers as much as other composers that I was trained with and grew up with. My study music was classical music, so I actually never took on film music like you guys, you two. So I don't know as much John Williams as I should outside the major things that he's done. So from what I do know, so it's not really a fair assessment, like, because I feel like, oh, maybe if I look harder, I'd find another theme.
Penelope, right?
I love Penelope. I love that theme. I love it. Anyway,
I'm gonna say something probably obvious. So sorry.
It's okay.
I love the Luke and Leia theme.
That's fantastic.
Good choice. That's a very good choice.
Yes.
It's so simple, but it has so much heart and so much yearning, and it has this kind of like uplifting line, and it just kind of carries to eternity. You know, it just has that. It is family centric. It's a love between a brother and a sister, but it's also, I would say, just transcends just to the idea of love and companionship as well. So just to remember, kind of using that theme as like, okay, how can I offer my services, or how can I help someone, or something like that to look back. But I love that very simple line.
And it works for other characters like Lando and what's her name, right?
No, it doesn't. No. Okay, so I have griped about that. I said it's a family theme, but I guess that's because they're making it a family theme. It's strictly Luke and Leia. Mm-hmm. But I was saying on my stream, months back now, that like that was a bad misstep of placing Luke and Leia's theme for them after Luke abandons his sister in The Last Jedi. I mean, it's just so many problems. Do you like The Last Jedi? It's okay.
No, I'm not. I respect it. I respect what he was trying to do. I just don't think it's a very good movie. I don't think it's a very well-made movie. I think there's too much. It's too much of a mess. And the way that he basically, it feels like the end of a trilogy instead of a middle portion of a film. But I like where he was taking, Rey and Kylo. I was fascinated as to what they were going to do in the last movie, because I had an idea of what could happen, and then
we all had ideas.
Everything. Yeah, like the retcon, the retcon. Yeah, it was just. But I mean, if they stuck with it, if they had the guts to stick with it, they're like, okay, fine, Rian Johnson did this, let's just go with it. I'd have more respect for that series than I do now.
I'm sure so many people on the internet have already done this activity, but yes, they should have taken what Rian Johnson did and say, okay, I know people are really mad about this, but we're going to make it good. Like, so the death of Snoke, he should have come back as like the Force ghost of Darth Plagueis or whatever, something big, but it was just I think
what they were setting up. The fascinating part was that Kylo was so far down the dark side that he was just pure evil, and he was going to rule the galaxy. And I was interested to see what his role in that was going to be. Also, very fascinated with the fact that Rey was nothing and she was weak. Like, I mean, easily to manipulate. And it would have been fascinating to see her take more of a turn towards the dark side, which completely contrasts. Well, I know, of course, they couldn't.
No, they couldn't, because that would have been a really bold move, and they should have.
Right, and that's where Last Jedi was taking the bold moves. It's like, fine, you're gonna blow shit up. Let's just completely blow it up, and let's just go there. instead of trying to safely take it back to what J.J. Abrams doing. And again, of course, the fact that they had no plan from the beginning and it wasn't one person's vision, that's the issue. I respect George Lucas, even though I'm not a big fan of
years of material to pull from.
Sorry?
Oh, EU.
I said, yeah, they totally didn't have any material like to pull from.
Right. I mean, and that's the other thing. I mean, you could easily done the twins and it would have been fantastic. But the thing is that you needed to have one vision, and that's where I respect George Lucas. Even though I'm not a huge fan of the prequels, he had a vision, and he world built and he created, I think, interesting characters. Although there were missteps along the way, you can tell it's just one guy's vision. The sequels were just a whole community of people just throwing ideas and seeing what sticks. I didn't mind where they were going after Force Awakens. I'm fine. And again, I'm not terribly upset about what they were doing in The Last Jedi, because I just don't think it's a very well structured film. That's my problem with it. It's rather boring. But if they had the guts to take Rey and almost force her to the dark side, and then I'm just wondering whether you keep Luke alive to help, maybe sacrifice himself at the end, or there might not even be a redemption. I think that at some point Rey decides that she, at one point she's like, forget it, I can't go down this route, and she destroys both her and Kylo, and that's it. There are no more Jedi. And I'm like, that would have been fascinating, but
it probably would have been better,
right? Like she's fighting it. But I mean, the fact is that I thought that it was interesting that she was such a noob. She didn't have training. She was force sensitive. I'm fine with that. But she was so easily to manipulate. I thought that was fascinating. Then her descent to the dark side, and then her trying to fight against that, much like one of my favorite scenes in the sequels was where she's fighting Kylo. That whole force fight that they had up on the ship, right? Where she's fighting back with the force, and because he's trying to read her mind.
It's visually beautiful, but it destroys the meta.
Yeah.
Or actually, it introduces the meta.
But I think it would have been interesting to explore her character as a nobody, how this could happen, and then to find the struggle that she's having, and as Kylo just ripping through the galaxy, destroying everything, and then somehow they manage to figure it all out. I don't know, or they lose. I don't know. Like, take it somewhere where we haven't been before.
Well, the problem with the Rise of Skywalker was she was fighting the dark side, but no one believed she was going to be in the dark side.
Right.
Like they're like, oh, yay, I beat it. It's like, well, we knew you were going to anyway.
Yeah, they were trying to make the claim that it was like genetic rather than any of the,
Oh, yeah,
I don't know why they went with that.
And that's about as midi-chlorians. That whole genetic Palpatine baloney was, it was just bad.
I mean, to be fair, I'd rather take that than Rey being like the grandchild of Palpatine, and that's why she turned to the dark side, which makes no sense.
I do appreciate George Lucas. I don't know if I would like a George Lucas sequel
are very
either.
misunderstood.
Oh no,
I've heard
George
Lucas try to use them.
His ideas are were weird.
But
yeah.
On my theme, I feel Daniel or Soundtracks with Birdman. I feel like I only know like 30% of John Williams stuff. So like if I go through all his library of all his catalog, and then I pick a theme, then I'll let you know.
Well, if you have 10 hours, you can listen to my recent podcast.
Yeah.
And hey, it's only one track per movie, and I forget midway completely, and that was a mistake. But it's a pretty interesting journey through his career. But I like Luke and Leia a lot, and I like that it can feel almost romantic, but you're right, it is more in a brother and sister loving way.
It's so intimate because it's especially with that that blue hazy light of the Ewok village, and it's just they've come together. He's revealing who she is, really, who her father is, and she, for all she knows, she's seeing Luke for the last time because he's going to try to bring back Darth Vader. So I love the simple lines. I love John Williams is bombastic in a very good way. He just demands everything from every musician of every family of instruments, but he also knows intimacy. So he knows activity and he knows intimacy, and there's just nothing like it when he just kind of gets you, homed in. Kind of like what we were talking about the with the Jurassic Park theme. There's a closeness, a connection where there should be bad monster music, but it's not. He chose not to take it that direction.
Yeah.
Matthew Flynn, same question, different answer.
Well, I would have brought up like any video game music that John Williams did, but then by actually looking it up, I'd noticed most of the music from video games related to John Williams aren't ones that he made for them, but rather just ones that he made for other things that have been copy pasted over. So I can't go that route. So instead, I'm going with the route that I'm surprised no one has mentioned, and that's the Harry Potter theme, and from the Harry Potter movies.
Like Hedwig's theme.
More so like the main theme itself, and also some of like the Wizarding World like related music.
Right.
Like when Harry first enters, like not Gringotts, when he first enters like Diagon Alley, and he's like, obviously he's like not familiar with magic in any way because he doesn't, at that point he didn't know it existed. And I love that, like the fact that the music just sort of really sells you on the idea that it's like mystical and it's like wondrous, and like really sells you on that without demystifying anything that's going on. Even though over the course of each film you're being shown more and more of that sort of stuff, and the scores still managed to keep that mystery, or a little bit of the mystery and the wonder of like the world.
Yeah, I like his magical elements too. It's just great that he sounds so different for different worlds. It's really cool.
Yeah,
it's really wonderful.
Yeah, it's amazing that you have a library of scores like John Williams had up until 2001. But I mean, little did we know that he's had Harry Potter in him, right? And here you are, it's like, how many years divorced from Star Wars and Indiana Jones and E.T. and Jaws, and yet here we are, and he's writing another classic. And it blows me away just how many instantly recognizable melodies that he has that the general public will just pick up on like that. And that's what he's so good at. I mean, the thematic writing, but just it being so memorable. And again, that goes back to his particular instrumentation, right? Like you don't even have to hear the theme. If you just hear the celeste, it's Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, one note of Jaws, and you just know it.
I will say, if I may, and I'm a composer. I've been in the profession for a while. Well, more musician, but I'd like to make money as a composer later. But I've composed for many years. I will say that the intro to Rey's theme in the sequel trilogy sounds too much like Harry Potter. Not the main theme of Rey, but that intro when she's driving down the sand dunes, I was like, that sounds like Harry Potter.
Yeah.
I never actually heard it that way. Although I've never listened to both tracks one after another.
Yeah, it's right off the beginning. It's it's either bells. I don't think it's bells, and I don't think it's celeste either. Is it?
I don't think it's celeste. It's not bells. It's a type of chime, or it's a xylophone gently played.
Right. Yeah.
But
I definitely hear like bells or chimes in like the part in the first Harry Potter when when Harry first arrives at Hogwarts.
Yeah.
And like that theme that's playing as he's like entering the place, and he's like seeing everything that's there. And
you got the sweeping strings going up and down and cascading. Is really nice.
It's either a bell or a chime, maybe both. It's been a while since I've listened to the theme.
Mm-hmm.
Well, most of the time I tend not to listen to the soundtracks by themselves.
What?
Unless it's a soundtrack that really speaks to me, then I'll listen to it by itself. But most of the time, I'll watch it alongside while watching the movie itself.
I will say E.T. is a standalone piece of music. Like you could go to a concert, listen to the E.T. soundtrack, and have no knowledge that it was made for a film. Like that's how good it is.
I think Rebecca has our answer, minor chord, and Celeste with I don't know how to. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Okay because it sounded like a Celestia, but
Yeah, it does have that quality, and I can remember it has this little. It's a bit of a mischievous beginning to it because she is a scavenger, and I think it fits her perfectly. But I can understand people mistaking it because it does have that same instrumentation as Harry Potter.
Yes, and more than that, though, that instrument is not introduced in any of the Star Wars previously.
Right.
That's why it feels really foreign.
Yeah, but it does now belong to Rey, which is interesting, and I love it.
Yeah. Anyone notice the complete lack of prequel music? Prequel.
Yeah, it shows there's
it's exclusively original trilogy music.
There's some
well, there's Padme's there's the love theme between Anakin and Padme. Da, da, da,
wait, was that in the sequels? I don't remember hearing that one in the sequels at all.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I thought you said prequels.
No, there's a
no, I meant prequels, like music from the prequels in the sequel trilogy.
Sequels. You're right.
Because the sequels only draw from the original trilogy.
Yeah. There's only one sequence right at the beginning of Rise of Skywalker where there's I think it's from Palpatine's teaching from Revenge of the Sith, which plays for about 5 seconds.
You can have 5 seconds of it.
Palpatine's theme is pretty cool.
It is.
And I do recall one of the trailers for Rise of Skywalker had like a remix or some kind of altered version of Duel of the Fates.
Yeah, probably.
But that didn't actually appear in the movie whatsoever.
No,
just
I'm
the trailers.
I'm really glad it didn't. I also that's the thing about Duel of the Fates. I never considered it to be a like an overarching theme of anything.
I felt like it worked for Maul and Qui-Gon.
Oh, and that's it. It's Maul's theme, by the way. It is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I don't feel like it worked for like an overarching, like, okay, we're gonna do it for this battle, then we're gonna do it for this battle.
Right.
And then you had the altered version of Duel of the
Fates. It's essentially action music for the lightsaber battle.
Anakin's fight.
Yeah.
You're right.
But then they reused it. I just never thought of it being like an overarching theme that meant other things in other movies, like seeing it when Anakin is on his speeder bike racing through Tatooine.
That was out of place. Yeah.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
I'm
or
so
the Trade
glad
Federation
I wasn't the only one who thought that.
Right. The Trade Federation march for the clones was like, what?
I did really like the Imperial March that played over the clone army in Attack of the Clones at the end. Because it was foreshadowing what would happen later on.
And I heard that was, I mean, again, rumors completely, but I think that was, I heard that was redone. Williams had another idea for music over top of that, and it wasn't the Imperial March.
I think the best thing I think the best thing that John Williams did for the prequels is when he took, the lighter version of Imperial March that played when Darth Vader returned back to being Anakin in Return of the Jedi. I like that he took that theme and added that as Anakin's theme in the prequels. So if you watch them in chronological order, it gives that moment more impact.
Yeah, the Imperial March is it's interpolated into Anakin's theme in the Phantom Menace. As for Darth Vader's death, that was actually orchestrated by Thomas Newman.
Okay.
So back in the day when Newman's young and up and coming, Williams handed that cue to him and said, here, you can orchestrate that one. So, but as for the Imperial March in Attack of the Clones, it's right at the end when all the spaceships are taken off and the Emperor, Palpatine, is overlooking his army.
Okay, so that's
just before the wedding.
That didn't work.
Yeah.
So I don't know whose cue it was for that. You know why? Now, obviously, we know Palpatine's a bad guy, but it was so heavy-handed. Like, it was so heavy-handed, like, oh, this obviously is going to be the cruisers for the Empire soon.
I think a huge quote of the Emperor's theme would have been more interesting because, I mean, the Imperial March it's far more associated with Darth Vader. It's far
You're
more
right.
associated with the Imperial Army, and this is
Yeah.
the clone army that, I mean, this eventually turns into the Empire, but I think, I mean, for the entire series, there was undertones of Palpatine's theme sprinkled throughout, especially the prequel, the Phantom Menace, and it's heard in Attack of the Clones whenever, you know, Palpatine's deciding where to the hood and cover his eyes, which I always
Right.
thought was funny. It's like, we know who it is, but yeah, I thought the Imperial March seemed a little off at that moment, but then the transition to the love theme, I think, is one of the best renditions of the love theme during the wedding and in the end credits. I think it's spectacular.
I'm sure that's correct. I always felt like it was the most poignant when Padme descends into Mustafar and she's rubbing her head because she's understanding that Anakin is turning for the worst. And when that theme plays, like it gets me. It's like, oh, she's gonna lose him.
Yeah, I agree. It's very powerful. I just think the it's again where we're talking about the full realization of a theme, and you know, Williams had played around with it and sprinkled it around throughout the movie, and I think it really comes into its first real big playing during the arena sequence, just before they are going to be sacrificed to those monsters, and then they profess their love for each other. But it's the wedding where it's just that huge moment for full orchestra, and you know, that crescendo up to a, you know, smashing cymbal, and it's all just, I love that sort of stuff. It's pretty magnificent. So but yeah, I love its little, I mean, it only appears about 2 or 3 times, I think, in Revenge of the Sith, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, it really hits hard. I mean, for as lacking as the scripts were in that sequence, or in that series of movies, and I mean, George Lucas isn't the greatest directors. I mean, a lot of the performances are it's like watching, you know, cardboard cutouts. But I think Natalie Portman really did her best to try to convey as much emotion that she could with as little direction as she got in those movies.
Oh, and she was, I mean, for that second film, she was still really young.
Very.
Yeah.
Yes. And I mean, again, just the clunky dialogue. Although, hey, so what if anybody can remember it? Do you remember the sequence? I mean, of course, it's just after the sand speech that Anakin gives. But they start to kiss for the first time, but then Padme breaks away, and then you hear the orchestra just kind of like clumsily stop. And it's really interesting because there's this full-fledged rendition of the love theme, and as she pulls away, they kind of stop, the flute stumbles a bit, and then it goes into something a little bit darker. And I've never heard that before. I've never heard John Williams do that before. It almost sounds like a mistake, but he's obviously doing it on purpose, because you know, you're like,
that was actually pretty, that's pretty seamless. Like an actual, I would caution any composer to do that maybe once or twice and not overdo it.
Yeah.
Because I think it could be a little, the thing with music is you have to, it's in its own dimension. It's not a part of that world. Like, for instance, the characters aren't hearing the music,
right,
you know, in their story. So when you actually do a literal depiction of something happening to a literal action happening between 2 characters, it might be kind of this uncanny effect as well.
Yeah. But I think the point there was that you're sort of like in the mind of Anakin, because he just, you know, wants to get in there, and because he's just so infatuated with her, and she's just not ready. And right, so there's that instant cutoff, boom, and you can feel it.
Yeah.
And you could feel the way she's feeling. She's like, you know, get away from me. You're freaking me out.
It was pretty delicate, though. I thought it was smooth, though, as far as music.
Listen to it again, but you can just hear the flutes kind of just slowly give up. It's like this, right?
Yeah, it's actually like a little thing going on.
It's really strange, and I've never heard it before. I have never heard it before in a score. And so it's very unique moment.
I might be reading too much into this, but maybe it's like some kind of like similarity between like the very like broken relationship that they have, kind of like, you know, like it's got seeming like or some kind of a mistake.
It just seems forced.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, they do break up in the end, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like
It's one of those instances where if circumstances were different, their relationship probably could have worked, but not the way they met.
I just wanted to bring up Rebecca's comment about, I guess, what her theme is would be Marion's theme for the flute solo. If you're still here, why Marion's theme? I'm curious to hear that story. But I have a story about Marion's theme. Last October, John Williams was conducting the BSO at Symphony Hall, and he did his new symphony that he's done for Annie. And when he got done, he came back out and he's like, well, I'm gonna play one more thing. And of course, it's quiet as all get out, because no one's talking. And he's like, I'm gonna play Marion's theme. And I went, woo! Really loud. And it carried so well in Symphony Hall. And John Williams chuckled, and then the audience laughed.
Was it broadcast? Was that a radio broadcast?
I don't know. Did they broadcast that concert? But I was loud.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Oh my gosh.
Well, it reminds me of two stories. It's like the Richard Donner story with Superman, where he ruined what was it, like the first take of the Superman main title.
Wait, I can't listen to anything Superman outside 78 because I still haven't watched the subsequent Superman films.
Okay, so this isn't going to ruin
about 78.
This is Richard Donner on the scoring stage, and he hears Superman for the very first time being performed, and of course, the dun dun dun. So Richard Donner's head literally thinks that John Williams in his music is saying Superman, and so he ran out onto the stage. And he's like, genius, brilliant, and he blows the take, completely blows the take. So I thought that was an interesting story. I did something similar. I was at a recording session for Medal of Honor Frontline for Michael Giacchino, and he plays this one theme that I've just been telling him for years that I loved, and it was the V2 rocket theme from Medal of Honor. And if anybody who's played Medal of Honor, listen to the scores, they know what I'm talking about. But I am in love with this theme, and I told him, I said, if there's one thing I wish I could do is just go back to your sessions at Medal of Honor. I never got a chance to see the first one, and I would love to just hear you play that. So anyway, a few years later, he is playing the score for Medal of Honor Allied Assault. Now, this is the first time Medal of Honor is on the PC. So he's able to revisit a few of these themes that he created for the first Medal of Honor. And so he plays this one piece, and all of a sudden, the V2 rocket theme pops up. And I essentially stand up, and we're in a church. It's called Bastyr Chapel in Seattle. And just as the piece ends, I mean, of course, you're supposed to like stop for about 3 or 4 seconds, just let the decay to decay, and for everybody to stop in the recording. But I'm just standing up like, yeah, that's awesome, V2 theme, and I'm like, I was like, oh shit. Well, thank goodness it was just the practice take. The first time I heard it. Right, I'm sitting there.
Man.
I was supposed to be working, so I did all the I did music videos for him for his video game scores when he was doing that, and I had just taken a break, listening to just this cue because I was trying to figure out who's playing what, so I can go in and grab a certain shot of whatever. And I heard this thing. I had no idea it was coming out, and so I had run back into the control room. I'm like, guys, I'm sorry. He goes, don't worry, we weren't recording. It was just we're just practicing. But yeah, I just bursted out and. It was standing ovation. It was the most amazing thing in the world. I got to hear them like one of my favorite themes live. But yeah, so I can understand how Richard Donner was thinking when he was hearing Superman for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. Rebecca gave us a very detailed answer. As a kid, I loved the minor six and the melody. As a kid, I had no idea what a minor six was, so God bless you. And got to play it in 6th grade band back in 98, which I felt very impactful to me. Obsessed with the multiple modulations and the 4-note motif at the end. Did you play flute in 6th grade? I'm guessing.
Has Rebecca heard the concert version of Marion's theme yet? Because he reworked it after Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and he finally presented a full-fledged concert version of Marion's theme, and it's beautiful.
I'm gonna have to listen to this.
I didn't like it as much when Annie Sophie Mutter was playing it
I don't
solo.
like anything she does.
So
Yeah.
okay, so
Sound Engraver,
Daniel,
I'm not the only one. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah.
Daniel, why would you announce that Anne Sophie Mutter is at this concert, and then I get all excited because I thought as a kid she was cool, and then you're like, I don't really like her.
I don't like her at all. I can't. Are you the same way where you just feel like she's murdering her instrument?
I feel like she's comes across as snooty as snot. Just,
Well,
So you don't like her personality?
yeah, I don't like her personality.
Okay.
And
I don't like her
don't-
instrument.
No, I think actually
I love violins. I love
I
violin.
love violin. I just don't like the way she plays her instrument. I'm just like,
every
that's probably it.
every famous violinist is pretty different in style. I personally like
I like his Zach Perlman just fine.
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. I like
Isaac Stearns all day, baby.
Yeah, Midori. People bash Hilary Hahn for being too mechanical. I think she's
I like
perfect.
her. She's fun.
Yeah. What was I going to say? I think Anne Sophie Mutter. I think she was married to Andre Previn.
She was.
So that could have rubbed off on her.
Oh, that. Well, and that's the connection with John Williams, right? So, but there's just something off about it.
She's very rubato for things that don't need to be rubato.
Totally,
like she's very
totally. I know exactly.
Yeah, she caramelizes the stuff, and maybe too
grating.
much.
It comes off really great. The way she attacks those strings, it's she's just digging in, and it's really off-putting. But I also find that the way that and I don't know what the technical term is, it's moving over certain strings. And I feel like then she's like playing wrong notes. Like she's adding in extra notes that shouldn't be there.
Part of the violin technique is if you press with a certain bow speed or bow pressure, or either with the bow or either with the left hand or both, it actually will extract some harmonics that you might not intend. So it might be that from the exertion.
Yeah, I can't watch that Vienna concert at all. None of it. And on top of that, I mean, Williams loves her, great. But Williams at this point, especially when he's rejigging his music, man, does he let her noodle. And I mean, just noodle on. Like there's a point where I think any kid in that audience wants to hear Harry Potter, right? And it's like, oh, great, we're going to get to hear Harry Potter. I think you get maybe one or two instances of the theme itself, but the rest of it is just her noodling on with.
I wonder if that has to do with famous violinists getting older. Except Stern and Perlman never had this problem. They've always been stylistically the same. But I've noticed, like when you start out really young, like a young prodigy, you're kind of careful, and you're kind of precise. But then I think as you just go on with a pretty extensive career, I think sometimes you can make too many liberties.
Yeah,
and
probably.
Yeah. I think some of those older violinists now, I mean, they were young and like, I could be wrong, but I saw a cover of her. I forgot what she was playing. And I was like 9 years old or 10 years old, but I thought she looked like Michelle Pfeiffer, but maybe I'm confusing her with someone else.
No, she looks nothing like Michelle Pfeiffer.
Maybe I'm confusing her with someone else.
You have to be. She's not
Well, I've seen you express about Michelle.
I grew up in the 80s. I know about Michelle Pfeiffer. No. Back me up, Eric.
Yeah, I don't think she look. Hair color, that's about it.
I mean, okay. Are you saying all blondes look the same? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know.
No, they don't.
Yeah. The thing is that I'm just shocked that he is. I mean, I'm so shocked that he's in love with Sophie Mutter and her playing. But I understand why. I mean, because he really loves the violin and he's really testing the range of the violin. I mean, he does that with his violin concerto, which I think is just utterly obnoxious because it really goes nowhere.
The first one or the second one?
The second one. The new one just feels like it's meandering and just totally unfocused. But his concert music is really different compared to his film music, and I really do appreciate
who are
some
you
of the stuff.
talking about?
So we're talking about John Williams' Violin Concerto 2 that he wrote for Sophie Mutter, and that premiered 3 or 4 months ago. And it sounds more, and it's like the length of a symphony. It's not a concerto. It is long. There's about 5, 6, 7 movements in it.
That's not
And
a standard
it
symphony at all,
it is
or concerto, I should say.
yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
I can't. Here's the thing: not everything needs melody. I just feel like I need a hook. I need a hook for at least for 43 minutes of something. Give me some hook. But
I
it's
feel
just
at the end of 43 minutes, at the end of 43 minutes, if that's not the end, it needs a hook.
yeah, and it goes. I mean, there's her playing. It's impressive. I mean, and what he does and how he explores the instrument, and that was his job. I think that's what he wanted to do with this piece. He just wanted to explore every facet of this instrument, all of its ranges, and all over the place, and whether it was melodic or not. I mean, it's an incredible piece, and you really need a proficient performer to play it properly. It's crazy, but it bored me to tears, and I just feel like there needed to be some sort of hook that you can go back to that just like grounds it. But I was watching it and I'm like, man, I cannot believe that this is going on as long as it's going. The flute concerto. Sorry, she didn't get a flute concerto. Was the flute concerto on the
Saraband?
Yeah, it was Varese Saraband. I think it's on with the violin concerto.
Yeah.
If you can't find a physical copy, I'm pretty sure it's on Spotify. So it's Varese Saraband Records, and I think it's Previn conducting.
Yeah.
Let me just check.
I've got it. Hang on. I'm gonna go grab my LP. I'll be right back. Y'all talk.
And I think it was only, it is available. So if you want that flute concerto, you should be able to find it.
Well, I wonder if she's talking about
you want the
actual
score?
manuscript.
Oh, you want the actual
Yeah.
score? Ooh, geez, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how you can get that stuff. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, Rebecca.
Scores are expensive.
I don't know. Yeah, they are very expensive. I don't know where you can get them. But the other thing is, like, Williams is changing his music constantly. So there's he rejigged his Han and the Princess love theme, and I don't think you can perform the original version anymore. He's
so
rejigged
the
it.
one we know is
So
that
the one
different?
so there's it's only been recorded about 4 or 5 times, and it's very standard. It's like, if you're very familiar with the structure of, let's say, the love theme from Superman, or even the Marion's theme, it goes through about 3 different variations, and it's very standard. And I love the playing of it, but he completely rejigged it after Force Awakens to include some of those variations into the piece. And again, there's something about the structure of the piece now. It just loses its power. And he did that he changed Scherzo for Motorcycle and Orchestra from Last Crusade. What's the other one? Oh, he recently debuted a new version of Across the Stars with Sophie Mutter.
Interesting.
And I think the theme is played once, and the rest of it's just kind of like violin noodling.
Okay, yeah, that's a real that shocks me a little bit to learn of that with John Williams, because, well, digression from a main theme done well works in the context of film. Like, you get this theme, and then you've got this action sequence, and that works. But when it comes to a concerto, I would always advocate main theme or exposition, digression with a hook going to the recap, like good old-fashioned Beethoven sonata form. And I'm not saying you can't be experimental now in the 21st century, but you don't want to be long-winded. I mean, there's this one friend of mine I knew in college where he got the position of playing a clarinet concerto, and I can't remember who this composer was. Not so famous, but he was famous for this clarinet concerto. And I remember my roommate and we walk out of the concert, and we're friends with him, so we congratulated him. But he played well. The orchestra played well, but the concert, the music just went on and on and on and on. It's like, okay, where's this settling in now? Like,
right.
It was like 23 minutes when it could have been like 14 minutes.
Yeah. And that's the way I felt about the second violin concerto that Williams wrote. It was, you're just waiting for something, And
That's too bad.
yeah,
That's really
because
too
it's a lot
bad.
of just solo violin, like her just noodling along, and then at points he then brings in the full orchestra, and there's some interesting music written there. But whew, it's a slog.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, she told us it was the score
yeah,
she wanted, not the
yeah,
LP.
she wants the actual score, but you got the
We'll
LP. That's
get the
pretty cool.
LP.
That's
awesome.
beautiful. That's really beautiful.
It's a great recording too. But yeah, I like a lot of these, like John. I don't know where John Williams's concert pieces are being played. Like, I mean, I don't know how many orchestras have it as part of their repertoire, unless he's performing it himself. You rarely will see it being performed by anybody else other than Williams. So it's too bad. Some of his stuff is pretty interesting. Like, what's the one that's the variation on his theme from 7 Years in Tibet? Is it a cello concerto? Which one's called? It's really good. But Williams' concert music is just way out there.
Rebecca, how did you find the show tonight? I'm just curious.
Radio silence.
Yeah, it's while I look for a piece of
I'm
music.
not familiar with John Williams' like older scores.
Sorry?
Except I'm not really that familiar with John Williams' scores. You know, the other ones other than his like really famous ones, like Jurassic Park and Harry Potter and Star Wars and Superman.
I'll be real, I didn't even know he wrote concertos.
Yeah, well, you should do a deep dive into his 60s stuff, because that's when he was playing around on TV. And so Lost in Space, Time Tunnel,
Lost in Space.
Land of the Giants, which is great. His jazz stuff for Checkmate.
Weirdly enough, I've seen Hook, but I had no idea it was a John Williams score.
Yeah, it's one of his best.
That's another thing. It's like I've seen Hook, but it was like decades ago, and so I don't remember the music.
It's not that old of a movie, Michelle.
It's
not that old of a movie.
Many years ago as well.
Well, I mean, yeah. So I'm curious as to what's old, because I mean, you can. I mean, like I said, you can go.
When I say old, I mean I just can't remember. That far back.
Well, because you can go back to the 60s when he began, and but you can jump into the 70s where he was the disaster film specialist. You can play around where he's working on television. He's doing pilots that aren't being picked up, like Ghostbreaker. He scored the pilot for Gilligan's Island. But I mean, if you watch the most recent incarnation of Lost in Space, his main theme is interpolated into Christopher Lennertz's main theme. But he wrote so many dynamite like melodies back then that the wide range of stuff he was doing. But the cool thing also about the 60s and 70s is that he's still doing jazz. I mean, that's his forte.
Yeah, I had heard about that.
So and I think that's what makes his music really interesting, because he comes at it, he's attacking it from a jazz perspective. But when he gets back into jazz later on in his career, like, Catch Me If You Can, or the sublime jazz autographs from The Terminal. I mean, Randy Kerber on piano, it's beautiful, but it's just so effortless. But John Williams is so good at it. But I just feel like you can hear that jazz background in any one of his pieces. Like, for instance, those crazy trumpet lines, that long line theme for the asteroid field just feels like it'd be played by a jazz band. You can strip it down and turn it into a jazz piece. But yeah, if anybody's interested in exploring Williams's career again, jump on my podcast. I did 6 parts, and I started from 1969 all the way to 2019. Played a piece from every score except Midway. It wasn't my fault. I forgot about it. But there's a whole bunch of interesting stuff in there, like his Olympic music, his news music. So everybody watches NBC News, that's John Williams.
That makes sense.
If anybody's watching the Olympics, not Bugler's Fanfare, but it's the Olympic fanfare and theme. Right. That's John Williams. But he's also written specific pieces that were just used by NBC. So he wrote a suite of music for the Barcelona games in 1992, just for the television division. He wrote a theme for the Seoul games. just for television. He wrote a piece for Statue of Liberty. He's written pieces for conductors. Unfortunately, he wrote a piece for Christopher Columbus, which is one of my favorite pieces of all time. I just wish it wasn't associated with Christopher Columbus, but
he did a thing for the 84 Democratic Convention. I think it was played once, and that was it.
Oh my God, I haven't heard that. Wow,
Yeah.
I would love to hear that.
It was played one time, and
wow,
that's it.
Well, I mean, when I discovered a few years ago his Winter Games theme from 1998 or 1989, he wrote this theme for these Winter Games that were U.S. Winter Games or something. Like so weird. Or, the 100th anniversary of Fenway Park. He wrote a fanfare for that.
I thought he was just ubiquitous because of the films. Now he's extra ubiquitous.
The commissions, his amazing commissions for just a whole wide range of stuff. Like he wrote a birthday piece for Leonard Bernstein.
Oh, that's sweet. That's cool.
He wrote, who was Sound of the Bells written for?
Because
that's really the main theme for like the Boston Pops now. I forgot who Sound of the Bells was written for. He just a wide range of stuff that he has written music for. And he wrote the new theme for Masterpiece Theater. PBS's Great Performances. He wrote the new stuff for that. Every Sunday night football game on NBC. So that's his theme.
Wow.
By the way, they played the orchestral version of it's called Wide Receiver. Cincinnati Pops played it a couple of nights ago. And that's the first time I've heard it live. And it's extraordinary. It feels like the Imperial March, but it's really a crazy piece. It's really, really detailed and complicated.
Just a sidebar. Have you guys ever, I don't know which YouTube channel did it because I'm not familiar with it, but have you ever heard of the Imperial March, but in major instead of minor?
I think I have.
It's pretty awesome.
Yes. It's weird.
I have not heard that.
It is weird.
Just YouTube Imperial March in major key. It's a trip, but it works because it's John Williams. It always works.
Yeah, one of my favorite videos was the one where they stripped away the music from the throne room at the end of Star Wars.
It's awfully quiet.
It's I know that they added a joke sound. I mean, I think it was the Oral Knots, I think it was, but they just basically they did their own sound effects. So they make it seem like, the guy who Peter Mayhew was screaming like a psycho when he was roaring. But anyway, it's silent. It is completely silent. I mean, again, just imagine being in the edit suite and you're putting together this picture and you have no music behind it. And I've done it myself. I've made my own movies and it's frustrating because I'm looking at the edit going, this sucks.
This is slow or
terrible. Yeah. But then you start putting a piece of music on it and you're like, there's the pace. There's the flow. Thank goodness. But I couldn't imagine watching Star Wars without any music. That would suck. But Williams,
can you imagine like the dialogue between the Return of the Jedi between the Emperor and then Luke and Darth Vader standing there? It's very, very slow, even with the music, but the music helps.
Oh yeah. And I sympathize. I mean, as an editor myself, I've looked at some sequences that I've done and I'm like, this is garbage, absolute garbage. But yeah, I mean, music definitely can help pace and edit. Much like,
that sounds very weird. No, I'm listening to the Imperial March in Magic. It sounds very weird to me.
Yeah. It's much like the I think it was the chase sequence for E.T. Although many people think it's the whole entire finale of E.T. But E.T. was re-edited to the music because Williams just couldn't get it on the scoring stage. He couldn't get it to sync. Again, all those sync points, he wasn't able to hit it.
Yeah.
So the projector was turned off. Spielberg said, "Just go for it. You conduct it. I'll re-edit." And I'm like, "That's fantastic. That's amazing." So Williams was able to really capture the essence of the performance and pay attention to that, and Spielberg was able to go in and fix the edit. And I thought that's amazing.
He did the same thing with AI, didn't he?
I don't know the story behind that. I'd have to look at the liner notes. What at the end? For the end, or is it somewhere else? Yeah, that's an amazing sequence too. Again, I can remember seeing that for the first time and just throwing that film away, going like, who cares about the feelings of robots? right? But then when you start thinking about it, you're like, okay, you're programmed to love. How do you stop
Did you
doing
not see
that?
Blade Runner? Did you not learn anything from Blade Runner?
Well, yeah, Blade Runner is very different, but I love Blade Runner. But this one just felt more grounded of like robots programmed to love, like who cares? But then I couldn't imagine, having that programmed within you and trying to turn it off, right? And it's like, wait, they're still robots. Wait, hold on a minute. They have feelings. So what's happening here? And then my brain just starts going crazy. And then all of a sudden, after the third time watching it, I'm just crying my eyes out at the end of the film. And when I didn't do that the first 2 times I saw it, but all of a sudden, just once you have that realization of what the film is about, man, the feels hit you hard. And so yeah, great movie.
My battery's going to die here pretty soon, so let's wind this down if we can. What is your least favorite John Williams film score, Eric?
John Goldfarb, Please Come Home.
Okay.
Hate it. Can't stand it. I will never listen. I have it. I don't want to listen to it.
I kind of liked it. I would say Family Plot.
And it's one I don't listen to either. Yeah. It's good, but it's one I don't listen to. But yeah, John Goldfarb, no thanks.
Okay.
I didn't play it on my show for a reason.
Matthew, do you have a least favorite John Williams film score?
Well, I can't immediately place on one I dislike, but I suppose War of the Worlds is probably one that jumps to mind. Mostly due to the fact that it doesn't really stick in my mind, and I don't really remember it as a John Williams score. Maybe I'll have to watch the movie a few more times.
It was done on purpose.
That'll help.
It was done on purpose. There's no melody. It's just angry and ugly and vicious and violent. And that's the way it was supposed to be composed or written, and it works. But yeah, I can understand that. There's no hook.
Yeah. That one just in my brain, back out the other side again.
Sound Engraver.
I don't know enough John Williams to know what I dislike, because you guys are making very concrete examples of things I have not heard. But I can't say something stupid like, oh, the NBC Olympic music, because I don't watch sports. No. So I would have to do my research. I will listen to your podcast and do my research, because I would like to. It'd be interesting to do something objective like that. Like, oh, that's actually kind of nice to hear, because as a composer, you will not get it right every time.
Right.
It's just the nature of it. No matter how much of a genius, no matter what the acumen, the experience, you just won't get it right every time.
Well, I mean, that's the feeling I have with, the BFG. I hate that movie. But one of the reasons why I don't like it is because I find Sophie's theme to be utterly irritating. On its own once or twice, it's fine. But man, as that thing went along, it's a theme that just grated on me. And so I didn't really like it. So BFG would be my second choice. But it's beautiful. Literally, it's beautifully written. The end credit suite is fantastic. But I can only take so many moments of that theme. It just bugs the heck out of me. Much like Rose's theme from The Last Jedi. Man, does that ever drag that score down.
Does she have a theme?
She had a theme. And just like, if you listen to the Battle of Crate, like there's all this fast-paced music, and all of a sudden it goes to Rose's theme, and it's played the same way every single time. It's just this slow version of it. It just sucks the energy out of everything in that movie. I can't stand it.
At least we all universally agree about that scene.
Oh, the kiss.
Oh, that I love it when I love it when she kisses him, and she passes out, and he's looking. Oh no, I think I think he's looking at the cannon exploding the front door.
Yeah,
and then she kisses like, we're all gonna die.
No, and he's like, I could have saved the world. What are you doing? Oh my God. Thank you. Hated that sequence so much. Because I was, you know what? Again, I was feeling it. I'm finally like, oh, you know what? Finn's gonna sacrifice himself.
Yeah.
He has nothing else to do.
Too.
Right?
My sister, she said that. I thought that, like, we all thought that. And
it would have been glorious.
I'm sure a certain person wanted to subvert our expectations.
But he was much like Han Solo in the original trilogy where his character really had nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
So the sacrifice would have been, people would have been talking that forever. That would have been, you know what? Even though that movie isn't great, I mean, Holdo's sacrifice doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get any feelings from that because I don't care about her. But we care about Finn, right? And Finn's gonna save the day. He's finally gonna save the day. He has something to do, and Rose ruins it, and then kisses him, and then we see I'm like, oh, it's terrible.
I was feeling a little emotional, but there was like this little tick in the back of my head saying, you know, something's gonna happen. Like something dislikable is gonna happen.
That's too bad, because I was feeling it too. I was just like, oh my God, they're gonna do this. Good on them. And then it was utter stupidity.
Well, soundtracks with Birdman, I would, you know me, I'm objective, so I can objectively say I don't have a John Williams score I dislike because I don't know as much as you guys know.
But that's good. That's good. It's okay to like all of this stuff. That's fine. Yeah.
I mean, I don't hate family plot. Our images. It's just like, it's not something I'm going back to. It's like, like I'll probably be like, I think I'll listen to Schindler's List today instead. I'm just feeling too damn happy.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
That's funny. This is a problem. I'm feeling too happy. I need to listen to Schindler's List.
Yeah. Which is why I never really listen to Schindler's List. I'm just
you have to be in the headspace to.
You do.
I don't like that headspace. I just, you know.
Yeah, I can.
They always play the main theme at every concert, and every concert I go to, it's Schindler's List is a standard. Every time.
It's gorgeous. It's heart-wrenching. Mm-hmm. I don't understand why it would be like the thing to do every time.
Yeah, I don't understand that.
You know, that and Flying Theme, Raiders March, Close Encounter Suite, Star Wars main theme, Schindler's
List. Same thing over and over again, right? Yeah.
Hey, I one time I met Keith Lockhart after a concert. I said, you know, I wish you would play more variety. And that time they played the theme from Nixon, and I lost my ever-loving mind.
Well, his album, the Lights, Camera, Magic album, is fantastic because it contains stuff that we normally don't get to hear record. He recorded Heidi.
I know, and they played Heidi that time too. And he told me something that I already knew in my heart, but he's like, well, the normies come and they expect to hear Harry Potter, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and E.T., you know, and we have to play those because otherwise people get pissed off. And I'm paraphrasing. He used nicer words.
I understand that for sure.
And I'm like, you know, I understand. I'm like, well, you know, you do John Williams film night 3 nights in a row. Why don't you break it up by decades? You know?
Yeah, you could do like a 3-ticket thing for a weekend. I would go to all 3 then if they did that, right?
I do, and it's the same show every night. Yeah. You know?
But I guess if you can't make it to Friday, you go Saturday, and you're gonna see the same show on Friday. But
I would only argue that it's a lot of material for musicians to rehearse.
True.
They get paid for that. They play it all the time. They're professional.
It's not easy. It's not easy,
man.
No. I mean,
they're all making 6 figures.
Check out Wide Receiver by the Cincinnati Pops.
People are.
Yeah. But still,
they get paid very well.
Okay. If you're a musician making 6 figures, you can run 5 hours a day, every day of the week.
If you're in the Boston Pops, you should be able to play anything when someone asks. Period.
Okay.
You know,
I agree.
It's like time you talk about, John Williams did Lost in Space. Play Lost in Space. We don't have the music. You're the Boston Pops. Come on. Dun, 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 dun. Come on, people.
I think that'd be great. A whole night of his TV music would be amazing.
Yeah.
Right? That would be so much fun.
And can I put you down for John Williams Film Night this year if they have it and if you're allowed to travel?
When is that happening?
It's probably May, end of May would be my guess.
Yeah, we are traveling. Well, see, the thing is, we're trying to go through the States to get into Newfoundland in July. So we are trying to do a stop in Boston, but of course, nothing's happening with the Boston Pops. The Red Sox are out of town during that time too. So I'm like, I wanted to go to Fenway so bad, but there's like nothing's happening in Boston when we arrive. But I'm not sure whether it's going to happen. It depends on whether the borders open up or else we're going across Canada, which just, oh my God, 10 hours through Quebec. shoot me now. So yeah, we want to go through New England and up through Maine. That's like a dream of my wife's. She's always wanted to go there, Salem, and all those places, and experience that.
Salem's
So,
nice. Salem's
yeah,
nice. Real
she
nice.
really wants to see that. So hopefully we can get through, but I don't know if I can ever get down. But I mean, it's an 8-hour drive from here.
That's not bad. Well,
It's
depending
not,
on
yeah, it's not bad.
the road.
But I would love to at some point for sure. But yeah, we just got to get through the border.
I'll let you know when the tickets drop and we can sort it out. But you're always invited to go with me. I'll get your tickets.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Can I say before Soundtracks with Birdman's battery slips, Canada has a much better national anthem than we have. I love our American national anthem, but man, there is something about the Canada. Oh, Canada! It pulls the heartstrings.
I think they're actually two really good pieces of music, because I've heard some other ones that are just so dry and dull, but at least ours are interesting. They end on a wonderful flourish. So, I mean, and it's great. I mean, you get to hear them both, during hockey games if an American team is in town. So,
that's cool.
Yeah, it's
I mean, I like America's national
yeah,
but I was like, I'm kind of moved by.
And the UK is cool too, Matthew Flynn. UK is cool too.
Is the UK from? Is it
God Save the Queen?
Is it okay? Yes.
No, which one? Is there two? Or is there two different? There's two things that you might play. Like doesn't the United States have like a unofficial second national anthem?
America the
God Bless
Beautiful?
America or whatever it is. Don't they play that during like the 7th inning stretch on baseball games all the time? Or I've heard like two different. I know about Star Spangled Banner, but there's another one.
The next default would probably be America the Beautiful.
Oh, maybe that's it. Maybe that's it.
Yeah.
But what the UK is?
I mean, we have God Save the Queen, and then the other one that I know of is Rule Britannia.
Oh, that's it.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
We only have one,
but it's a good one.
And our lyrics change occasionally. So,
oh, do they?
Yeah.
I have a hymnal like sitting on my nightstand right there, and it has "O Canada" in the original text.
We didn't want to offend people, so we had to change. Did we take God out?
Well, then it's not my favorite anymore.
Yeah, I think we took God out of the. I think we took God out of. Oh no, that's not true.
You call it Supreme Ruler instead of God's name. He's called Supreme Ruler.
Yeah, I still sing it the old way, and I'm trying to think of what the. And by the way, there's different verses as well. So
yeah, it's four verses.
There's a whole pile of them, and we stand on guard for thee. Which one is it?
I got it. Want me to get it?
All right. Well, I'm at like 12% and dropping now I'm at 11.
Okay. And I actually have to go too soon. So
thank you everyone for coming by tonight. Thank you, Matthew Flynn. Thank you, Sound Engraver. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah.
Pleasure. This was fun.
Boomer sends his love. Happy birthday, John Williams.
Happy birthday.
It's the new people that came by tonight. It was good to see you. Come back tomorrow night. We're doing E.T. Rewatch. And it's John Williams month here. We're doing The Accidental Tourist, Minority Report, and The Cowboys, and of course E.T.
Awesome. Wow. And it's good to see you in person, Matthew Flynn.
Yeah. And adopt, don't shop, and keep listening to great film scores.